Welcome, dear subscribers and curious listeners of my channel. In the Harry Potter books, J.K. Rowling created countless vivid, charismatic characters that stick with us from the very first pages. But alongside these star roles, some characters feel underdeveloped or too superficial. It's as if they exist solely to fulfill one plot function and nothing more. Today we're turning the spotlight on those overlooked figures. Enjoy watching. Number 1. Regulus Black. The name Regulus Arcturus Black first appears in the 6th book, shrouded in mystery. The signature R.A.B. on a note found by Harry and Dumbledore next to a fake Horcrux sparked a frenzy of fan theories. Who could it be? A spy? A double agent? Some even guessed Snape. The wilder the theory, the better. But the truth turned out to be simpler. R.A.B. was Sirius Black's younger brother, Regulus. A character previously mentioned only in passing ended up being the one who risked everything to take down Voldemort. And that would have been fine if he hadn't remained just that, a mention. Yes, we're given a brief backstory of his betrayal, his death, and his attempt to destroy the Horcrux, but it all feels too condensed. His tale could have been a powerful, tragic saga of redemption, but instead it's a fleeting footnote in someone else's journey. Number 2. Lavender Brown. We've known Lavender Brown since the first year. She studied in Gryffindor alongside Harry, Ron, and Hermione. But she only took on a notable role in Half-Blood Prince when she became Ron's girlfriend. Her narrative purpose is painfully clear: to annoy. She embodies every cliché of a sugary schoolgirl crush: giggles, pink hearts, performative affection. Even Ron, the supposed object of her affection, shows little genuine interest in her. After their breakup, Lavender vanishes from the story and only reappears briefly at the end, just in time to die. Her character never broke out of the comedic sidekick role in a schoolyard drama. Number 3. Fleur Delacour. In Goblet of Fire, Fleur Delacour is the embodiment of icy beauty and arrogance. A Beauxbatons student and Triwizard champion, she radiates elegance and superiority. Like many boys at Hogwarts, Ron instantly falls for her. But once Fleur begins dating Bill Weasley, her image changes dramatically. Suddenly, she's caring, resilient, selfless. She's ready to stand by her fiancé even after he's mauled and disfigured by a werewolf. That kind of character growth could be great if only it had been shown. Instead, it's simply told to us. We don't witness Fleur's internal struggle or transformation. We're just introduced to a completely new version of her in the next book. The proud, bold girl from before is gone, and with her, the very spark that made Fleur unique. Number 4. Cho Chang. Her first appearance comes with admiring glances from Harry during a Quidditch match. Later, she attends the Yule Ball with Cedric. After his tragic death, grief, vulnerability, and an attempt to find comfort in Harry. But we only ever see Cho through Harry's eyes. She's never developed as an independent character. In Order of the Phoenix, she's portrayed more as moody, emotional, and unable to live up to Harry's expectations. And that's the narrow lens through which we remember her. Cho's flaw isn't that she's weak. It's that she's never given the chance to feel real. Her emotions are filtered through Harry's perspective, her actions defined by his reactions. But had she been portrayed differently, Cho could have become a rich, nuanced character, grappling with grief and disillusionment. Number 5. Dennis Creevey. A Gryffindor first year and the younger brother of Colin Creevey, Dennis appears briefly in Goblet of Fire. His defining trait? Enthusiasm. He's thrilled by everything, meeting a centaur, falling into the lake, even just being at Hogwarts. While Colin, in Chamber of Secrets, at least contributes to the plot, his camera and petrification play a part in the basilisk mystery, Dennis is merely a copy. Younger, louder, and even more forgettable. Why was he introduced at all? It's unclear. Maybe Rowling intended to show a new generation of students or add some youthful energy. But in the end, Dennis feels like a hollow echo of his brother. A character with no story, no role, and no legacy. Number 6, Pansy Parkinson. Pansy Parkinson was never given a chance to be more than a sneer. From her first appearance in Philosopher's Stone, she clung to Draco Malfoy and ridiculed anyone outside her circle. She mocked Hermione as that filthy little mudblood and laughed loudly whenever Harry fell off his broom. In Half-Blood Prince, she gazed at Draco with adoration while the war around them crept closer. She wasn't brave, clever, or even particularly cruel, just mean, loud, and shallow. A Slytherin cliché. Her final moment came in Deathly Hallows when she shrieked, "But he's there! Potter's there! Someone grab him!" Instead of rising to the moment, she turned into a symbol of cowardice. Professor McGonagall dismissed her coldly. "And what exactly do you think you're doing, Miss Parkinson?" That line closed her story. No backstory, no growth, no redemption. She could have shown us what it meant to grow up Slytherin in a time of war, but she never moved beyond the scowl in Draco's shadow. Number 7, Zacharias Smith. Zacharias Smith walked into Order of the Phoenix with a smirk and a question. "How do we know you know who's back?" he asked, arms crossed, voice thick with doubt. It wasn't just skepticism, it was arrogance. He challenged Harry's every word, and yet somehow he still joined Dumbledore's army. That choice never made sense. He didn't believe in the cause, he didn't trust the leader. So why was he there? He never changed. Throughout their meetings, Zacharias remained irritating. He scoffed at lessons, he sneered at Neville. He was the one student nobody wanted around. In Half-Blood Prince, he even fled the Great Hall ahead of first years during a Death Eater attack. His cowardice became his final note. Zacharias Smith, who had been a real pain during DA meetings, pushed past first years to escape first, Rowling writes. That line sealed his image, rude, selfish, shallow. And yet there was something there, a chance to show a student full of fear, someone not ready to fight, but trying to understand. He could have shown what it looked like to struggle with belief, to be afraid, but still present. Instead, Zacharias became a caricature, a name tossed in to fill space, the kind of character readers remember, but only to dislike. Number 8. Stan Shunpike. Stan Shunpike made his entrance with a bang, quite literally, as the conductor of the night bus in Prisoner of Azkaban. With his Cockney accent, clumsy charm, and constant banter with Ernie the driver, and the talking shrunken head, Stan was unforgettable. "Take it away, Ern!" he shouted as the triple-decker bus rocketed through London. He wasn't brilliant, but he was cheerful, loud, and very real. A yowl class wizard just doing his job. Then came Half-Blood Prince. Out of nowhere, Stan was arrested by the Ministry of Magic for allegedly being a Death Eater. The accusation made no sense. Lupin himself said Stan Shunpike never joined the Death Eaters. It's just the Ministry wanting to look like it's doing something. That line held so much weight, it exposed how corrupt and desperate the Ministry had become. Stan could have been the perfect lens to show how ordinary people suffered under Voldemort's rise. But Rowling never followed through. We never heard from Stan again. Was he really imprisoned in Azkaban? Was he released? Did he suffer? Did he change? Nothing. When he appears briefly in Deathly Hallows attacking Harry while under the Imperius Curse, there's no reflection on what he's been through, no reaction, no identity. Just a name slapped on a broomstick in a battle scene. His arrest had promised complexity. Instead, we got silence. It's frustrating because Stan could have represented the scared, manipulated wizarding world. A man too simple to see the danger until it swallowed him. One line, Stan blinked through the smoke, his eyes dull, as if he'd been somewhere he couldn't forget, could have changed everything. But he vanished like so many others who weren't chosen for a deeper story. And we were left wondering what happened to the boy with the grin and the bus full of chaos. Number 9, Antonin Dolohov. Antonin Dolohov should have terrified us. He was one of Voldemort's most loyal Death Eaters, imprisoned in Azkaban for torturing Muggleborns and Order members. When he escapes, in Order of the Phoenix, it's treated as a major threat. He duels with serious power. In the Department of Mysteries, he nearly kills Hermione with a curse that hit her squarely in the chest. The scene is brutal. Hermione crumples without a sound. That's Dolohov's legacy: silence, violence, and no identity. But he's a shadow. Compared to Bellatrix, who is insane, devoted, and chillingly theatrical, Dolohov is empty. We're told he's dangerous, but we're never shown why. There are no memories, no backstory, no words from his own mouth. Even in battle he doesn't speak, just curses and vanishes. In Deathly Hallows he's back again, dueling Lupin, then trying to capture Harry. And again he's nothing more than a dark wand in the distance. Rowling gave her villains layers. Snape was a spy with a broken heart. Draco was a boy torn between fear and legacy. Even Fenrir Greyback had a twisted motive, but Dolohov, he was just there, killing, torturing, dying, a man with a name but no soul. Why did he join Voldemort? What did he believe? Was he ever anything but cruel? Imagine if we had even one flash of his past. A cold memory, a line like Dolohov once taught at Durmstrang, his lessons full of shadows. That would have done it. A man with history becomes a villain with weight, but we never got that. Dolohov remained faceless, a killing spell in human form, and that made him far less frightening than he should have been. Number 10, Terry Boot. Terry Boot was there, always there. In Order of the Phoenix, when Dumbledore's army met in the Room of Requirement, his name was listed among the recruits. Terry Boot agreed that Harry was a brilliant teacher, Rowling wrote. But that was all. A single sentence. A student ready to fight, clever enough to be in Ravenclaw, brave enough to join a secret group, and then swallowed by the crowd. He fought in the Battle of Hogwarts. He stood shoulder to shoulder with Harry, Ron, and Hermione. His wand was raised, but he never spoke, never acted, never became more than a name in a list. While characters like Seamus Finnegan, Lavender Brown, or even Anthony Goldstein had quirks or moments of recognition, Terry remained a shadow, present but hollow. It's strange because Ravenclaw deserved more voices in the final battle. Luna shone with individuality, but what about the others? Terry could have added a sharp tongue, a cool head, or a flash of Ravenclaw logic amid the chaos. Instead, he drifted through the story like a ghost with no past, no fear, no voice. He was always described as being there, but never allowed to be seen. Even one line, just one, might have helped. Something like, Terry Boot gritted his teeth as he stepped into the rubble, remembering the books burned by Death Eaters in the library. That would have given him a reason, a soul, but without it, Terry was just a name read off a parchment, a boy with no face in a war that needed everyone to matter. Number 11, Marcus Flint. Marcus Flint was never meant to be liked. As the captain of Slytherin's Quidditch team, he charged onto the page in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone with a snarl on his face and a bat in hand. Rowling described him as having troll-like features and a brutish attitude. Flint had blocked him, Harry complains after a foul that Madame Hooch simply doesn't see. That moment set the tone for Flint's character. Dirty tactics, no remorse, and a smile when someone else got hurt. But even for a villain on the Quidditch field, Flint was flat. He wasn't cunning like Draco, cruel like Crabbe and Goyle, or complex like Snape. He was just loud. He cheated, shouted, and glared. In Chamber of Secrets during the infamous match in the rain, he and his team nearly kill Harry while pretending to follow the rules. No punishment, no backstory. Just rage in green and silver robes. He was the embodiment of Slytherin aggression, but with none of the ambition or depth that defined the house. That's the real shame. Quidditch mattered at Hogwarts. It wasn't just a game. It was pride, rivalry, belonging. We saw Angelina Johnson's leadership. We watched Oliver Wood live and breathe tactics. But Marcus Flint, he led a team that bulldozed others and smiled about it. Why did he care about winning? Did he train hard or just intimidate his way through? Was he pressured by expectations from his house or family? We'll never know. Rowling never gave him that space. By the time he disappeared from the books, Flint remained frozen in his role, the school bully with a broomstick, a boy who growled and fouled but never spoke with meaning. Even a single line like, Flint scowled at the locker room mirror, rubbing mud from his jersey, angry at more than just the match, would have hinted at something human, but without it he stayed the same from first foul to final whistle. A shadow in green growling in the background, number 12, Justin Finch-Fletchley. Justin Finch-Fletchley had every reason to be a memorable character. Introduced in the Chamber of Secrets, he was a Muggle-born student from Hufflepuff, polite, well-spoken, and previously accepted into Eton, a detail that instantly set him apart. When the attacks at Hogwarts began, Justin became one of the victims petrified by the basilisk. His fear of Harry, whom he believed to be the heir of Slytherin, added a realistic layer to the growing paranoia among students. It was Justin's fate that raised the stakes for readers. If even the kind and intelligent boy from Hufflepuff wasn't safe, no one was. And then he vanished. After being revived from petrification near the end of the second book, Justin all but disappeared from the story. He occasionally appeared in crowd scenes, like during Dumbledore's army gatherings, but his presence was reduced to background noise. His name was never tied to any meaningful action again. The character who had once represented the vulnerable voice of the Muggle-born community simply faded out. It's jarring, especially when other minor students like Colin Creevey or even Ernie Macmillan retained clearer arcs and personalities. Justin had the potential to be more than just a victim. Imagine how powerful it would have been to see him react to the Ministry's anti-Muggle-born propaganda in the Deathly Hallows. A student who had already been targeted once, frozen in terror, accused by his peers, could have offered a thoughtful, grounded voice in a time of growing darkness. Instead, the boy who once quivered behind nearly headless Nick after hearing a snake's hiss was never given the chance to grow from that moment. Rowling could have deepened his arc with even one line of development. In Order of the Phoenix, she writes, Hannah Abbott had become rather jumpy since the death of her mother. That single sentence gave Hannah a pulse of life. But for Justin, there was no such line. He remained frozen, not by a basilisk this time, but by neglect. Number 13, Romilda Vane. Romilda Vane entered the Harry Potter series like a flash of perfume in a hallway full of dust and dread. Her first appearance in Half-Blood Prince was almost theatrical, bright-eyed, bold, and utterly bewitched by the fame of Harry Potter. In a train compartment bustling with gossip and teenage restlessness, she made herself known not by spellwork, bravery, or wisdom, but by a carefully orchestrated attempt to win Harry's affection using a love potion. It was a moment that could have been the spark for something more profound, a teenage girl desperate to matter in a world drowning in chaos. But the story passed her by like a train she failed to catch. J.K. Rowling presented Romilda as comic relief, a foil to the ever-growing darkness consuming the wizarding world. In a year where the threat of Voldemort was no longer theoretical, and death was creeping into even the most secure corners of magical life, Romilda became the symbol of shallow distraction. She was used to puncture tension, to remind readers that teenage absurdities still existed even while professors disappeared, students mourned, and the war loomed. But the tragedy lies not in Romilda's silliness, it lies in how shallowly she was written, how little her existence offered beyond a joke about misplaced desire and foolish ambition. We are told that Romilda is attractive, that she is admired by other girls, and that she is bold enough to invite Harry to sit with her on the Hogwarts Express. But her boldness is not painted with nuance, it's painted with parody. When Ginny Weasley dryly calls her a bit desperate, it's played for laughs. And yet desperation is fertile ground for storytelling. What could make a young witch resort to dosing someone with a love potion, one of the most ethically dubious actions in the magical world? This is a world where consent can be bent with a drop of enchanted syrup, and yet Romilda's use of it is waved away as schoolgirl nonsense. The love potion subplot, particularly in Half-Blood Prince, had all the ingredients for dark comedy, Ron Weasley becoming the accidental victim of Romilda's scheming and being rushed to Professor Slughorn in a daze of infatuation. But this scene says far more about Ron and the careless danger of magical items than it does about Romilda. She remains a phantom, a caricature hiding behind glamour and ambition. There is no exploration of who she is, no attempt to understand her motives. We don't learn her house, her background, or even her real personality. She exists only as a one-dimensional symbol of the danger of unchecked fandom. Had Rowling chosen to deepen Romilda's arc, the series could have gained a compelling subplot about the peril of idolatry. Harry, after all, had become a symbol more than a person by Half-Blood Prince. Romilda's obsession with him reflects the broader wizarding world's unhealthy fixation on the boy who lived, but instead of exploring what it means for someone to chase an illusion in a time of real danger, Romilda is discarded. She is laughed at and then forgotten. When she does reappear, it's only to reinforce the joke. She continues to pursue Harry with the same clueless tenacity, even as people around her are dying. One of the few direct mentions of Romilda comes in Chapter 9 of Half-Blood Prince, when Harry tells Ginny, "Romilda Vane asked me if I had a tattoo of a hippogriff." It's funny, Harry's exasperation and Ginny's mockery make it light-hearted, but it reveals that Romilda's perception of Harry is absurdly detached from reality. She doesn't see him as a boy weighed down by trauma, guilt, and prophecy. She sees a fantasy, an idealized version crafted from headlines and hallway whispers. That disconnect is never resolved. Romilda never sees the real Harry, and we never see the real Romilda. What makes this particularly frustrating is how well Rowling has handled other minor characters. Take Lavender Brown, for example. She, too, begins as comic relief, a bubbly girl with a flair for dramatics and affection. But her arc grows. Her relationship with Ron, though short-lived and superficial, is given weight and attention. Her heartbreak is visible. She is allowed to grieve, to fight, and ultimately to fall in battle. Lavender becomes a girl who believed in love, only to face war. Romilda, on the other hand, stays locked in her introduction, never permitted to grow beyond the girl with the love potion. Even Pansy Parkinson, often written with the snarl of a villainess, is given more dimension than Romilda. Pansy's cruelty is consistent but defined. We know she supports Draco, despises Gryffindors, and has her loyalties tangled with the pure-blood cause. We can imagine her upbringing, her place in the Slytherin social web. Romilda has none of that. She floats, nameless in her motivations, faceless outside of her actions. She is not comic relief, she is narrative filler. And it's a shame because her potential was enormous. Imagine instead a Romilda who wasn't just a fan of Harry, but a girl trying to escape a life that felt small and meaningless. Maybe she came from a wizarding family that had suffered in the First War, one that lived in fear and reverence of Harry's name. Maybe her fixation on him was born from a place of desperation, not just for love, but for purpose. If her background had been sketched with even a brushstroke of depth, her actions could have been reframed, not as silly, but as tragic. A child raised on the myth of the chosen one, convinced that proximity to him would make her someone. Her use of a love potion could then be seen as the climax of internalized pressure. The magical world taught her that Harry was hope, that Harry was survival. What if her desire to ensnare him wasn't rooted in vanity, but in belief? That loving Harry wasn't just schoolgirl infatuation, but the only dream she was allowed to have. Suddenly, the potion becomes a symbol of a wider sickness, a world that taught its children to worship icons instead of becoming them. Number 14, Miles Bletchley. Of all the Slytherin players who ever guarded the Quidditch hoops, few are remembered less than Miles Bletchley, and yet, paradoxically, he is remembered just enough to leave readers wondering why he was ever named at all. His name appears in multiple books, The Philosopher's Stone, The Chamber of Secrets, and The Order of the Phoenix, each time in the capacity of Slytherin's keeper. He is on the pitch, defending his team's goalposts. He is there in the thick of Hogwarts competition. And yet, he is not really there, not in the way characters should be. He has no voice, no inner world, not even a hint of it, no thoughts, no gestures, no signs of personality. Bletchley is like a statue, carved from name and position only, hollow, silent, and ultimately forgettable. And that is the real tragedy. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Miles Bletchley is first introduced during Harry's debut Quidditch match, and it's Bletchley in goal for Slytherin, Lee Jordan announces with his usual flourish. But that is all. No description of his face, his build, his skill, or his mindset. He is simply a wall with a name. In the same match, we get more colourful insights into other Slytherin players, Marcus Flint with his troll-like features, and the brutal tactics of the Slytherin beaters. But Bletchley, a blank slate, Rowling, who so masterfully breathes life into even the smallest characters, a bartender in Hogsmeade, a witch selling tooth-flossing string mints, leaves Bletchley untouched. His name is uttered again in the Chamber of Secrets as he stands once more in front of the Slytherin goalposts. The moment is nearly identical to the first. The context changes slightly. Harry is more experienced, the stakes are higher, but Bletchley remains static. Not a word passes his lips. No sneer, no smirk, not even a glance described. If he saves a goal, we do not hear of it. If he fails, we are not told whether he grits his teeth or slumps in frustration. He is a fixture of the game, not a character within it. Perhaps most baffling is his reappearance in Order of the Phoenix, years after his initial mention. He is still on the Slytherin team, which raises several questions. Is he repeating a year? Has he remained at Hogwarts longer than expected? The book says, and Bletchley, the keeper, blocked Angelina's shot with his elbow and the crowd booed. This is the first time we see him do something, even if it's just using his elbow to deflect a quaffle. But again, the moment passes with no exploration. Angelina Johnson is given more attention in her frustration than Bletchley is in his one act of physicality, a gesture without context, a name without weight. And yet, the fact that his name does recur suggests Rowling had something in mind. She could have easily replaced him with a nameless keeper each year. Quidditch players rotate in and out. Names change, but not Bletchley. His consistent presence signals that he was meant to be part of the world's scaffolding. The problem is that the scaffolding is visible, but never used to support anything meaningful. The name Bletchley lingers like an unfulfilled promise. Compare him to another minor Slytherin player, Adrian Pusey. Pusey is also a background figure, but even he gets more depth. When he scores, it's dramatic. When he fails, it is noticed. We read that Pusey dived, but the bludger hit him squarely on the back. The image sticks. You can picture him flailing in the air, you imagine his pain, his fall, but with Bletchley there's only stillness. He is described more like a goalpost than the player defending it. Or take Cormac McLaggen, the arrogant Gryffindor who tries out for keeper. He only appears in one book, Half-Blood Prince, but we learn more about him in a few pages than we do about Bletchley in several years. McLaggen is pompous, overconfident, dismissive of women, and yet oddly competent. He's a foil to Ron. He moves the plot. He creates tension. Bletchley creates silence. One cannot help but wonder what Miles Bletchley might have been like if Rowling had given him a few strokes of identity, a short temper, a secret talent, a rivalry with another student. Even a single sentence like Bletchley cursed under his breath as the quaffle slipped through his fingers would have changed the entire perception of him. But no such sentence exists. He remains voiceless, invisible. There is a moment in Order of the Phoenix where tension simmers between Gryffindor and Slytherin during a match. Fred and George are about to be banned from the team for fighting with Draco Malfoy. Chaos explodes. Everyone is involved, everyone except Bletchley. One might expect the Slytherin keeper to be part of the commotion, to shout, to taunt, or at least to react. But once again, he is absent in presence, reduced to a shadow in the chaos. This absence is especially striking because Rowling is known for her ability to add flavour to even the most minor of characters. Stan Shunpike, the conductor of the night bus, appears for a handful of scenes but feels more alive than Bletchley ever does. This is Stan, Harry is told, and within moments we know he's talkative, slightly dim, and eager to impress. That's more than we ever get from Bletchley across 3 books. The curious case of Miles Bletchley becomes even more apparent when you consider the nature of Slytherin House itself. Slytherins are ambitious, cunning, and often drawn in sharp relief. Draco Malfoy, Pansy Parkinson, Theodore Nott, even Crabbe and Goyle, each represents a facet of the house. What then does Bletchley represent? What part of Slytherin is he meant to show us? Perhaps he was intended as a disciplined athlete, focused and silent. But again, Rowling does not tell us. The canvas remains blank. Fans have filled in the gaps themselves. On fanfiction forums, Bletchley is sometimes imagined as a brooding loner, the kind of Slytherin who doesn't engage in petty feuds. Others picture him as a brutal keeper who plays dirty, an enforcer who elbows more than he catches. These are inventions, of course, but their very existence highlights the character's incompleteness. The community wants more than the books provide. They are hungry to fill the void. Number 15, Amelia Bones. Amelia Susan Bones was a name that promised so much. Introduced as the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, she held a position second in power only to the Minister of Magic himself. She presided over high-profile trials, including the one where Harry Potter stood accused of underage magic in Order of the Phoenix. In that scene, Amelia Bones stood apart from her colleagues. She was the only one who seemed genuinely interested in the truth. While Cornelius Fudge sputtered with fury and Dolores Umbridge narrowed her eyes in predatory glee, Amelia listened. She asked calm, precise questions, and her famous quote, "You produced a fully fledged Patronus?" was not a statement of doubt, but of genuine amazement. Her voice rang with intelligence and fairness, but that would be nearly the last we heard from her. The tragedy of Amelia Bones is not only that she was murdered by Lord Voldemort, but that readers had no emotional footing when they learned of her death. She was simply gone, off the page, swept aside like a detail in a police report. Scrimgeour's announcement in Half-Blood Prince was chilling in implication, but hollow in impact. Amelia Bones has been found dead. It looks like he did it himself. That should have been a moment of horror, a symbol that the light was losing, that the best and brightest were being picked off. But it read like a footnote. The weight of her murder never truly lands because J.K. Rowling never gave readers the time or the space to know her. This lack of narrative investment is especially striking given the richness of the world Rowling created. Amelia Bones could have been the wizarding equivalent of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a beacon of legal strength, cool logic, and incorruptibility in the face of political chaos. Instead, she was a courtroom voice for 3 pages and then a name mentioned during a casual conversation. The reader was given no scenes from her point of view, no glimpse of her daily battles within the ministry, no memory of her rising through the ranks. She was already an impressive authority figure when we met her, but how did she get there? Who mentored her? What compromises had she refused to make? These are the foundations of great characters, and they were never laid. Contrast this with Minerva McGonagall, who also serves as a figure of justice and wisdom. McGonagall's sharp eyes and dry wit are present in nearly every book. We know her backstory, at least in pieces, her youth, her heartbreak, her loyalty to Dumbledore. When she raises her wand in the final battle or stands up to Dolores Umbridge, we feel something, because Rowling allowed us to walk beside her long enough to earn that emotional connection. With Amelia Bones, we were never invited in, we were merely informed. Even in terms of visual presence, Amelia Bones was distinctive, described as a large square-jawed witch with very short grey hair, wearing a monocle. She cut an unmistakable figure. Her image is memorable. She stands in the mind's eye like a carved bust, severe and upright. But it's an image frozen in time. She never moved beyond that trial scene, never stretched beyond that monocle. She had the aesthetic of a great character, but none of the arc. She was all potential, no payoff. Her family connections offered another missed opportunity. Amelia was the aunt of Susan Bones, a Hufflepuff in Harry's year. Here was a perfect opening for depth and personal stakes. Imagine if Susan had mentioned her aunt more frequently, or if Amelia had ever written to her niece at Hogwarts with advice, warnings, or encouragement. The murder of Amelia Bones could have then been a moment that reverberated through Hogwarts, through Susan, through Harry's generation, but Susan remains a minor character, and Amelia's death remains a line of text. Amelia's position in the Ministry also raises tantalizing questions that are never explored. She led the department that oversaw the Auras, the improper use of Magic Office, the misuse of Muggle Artifacts Office, and the Wizengamot. That's a tremendous portfolio, essentially the backbone of wizarding law and order. What were her challenges in keeping that structure upright as Voldemort's shadow grew? Did she suspect Fudge of corruption or cowardice? Did she fight to keep her department from being overrun by Death Eater sympathizers? These are the tensions that drive great drama, and Rowling left them untapped. When the Second Wizarding War escalated, Amelia could have served as a key figure in the resistance from within. Kingsley Shacklebolt, also a Ministry employee, becomes a well-developed Order member with a clear role in the fight. But where was Amelia? Did she coordinate with Dumbledore? Did she question the official narrative about Sirius Black? Did she clash with Umbridge? She was in the eye of the political storm, yet we were shown none of it. Rowling painted her into a corner and then erased her. It's especially strange when you consider that Rowling spent significant time developing characters with much less importance. Take, for example, Stan Shunpike, the conductor of the night bus. He's barely relevant to the plot, yet we hear multiple updates about his fate during Voldemort's rise. We know he was imprisoned in Azkaban on flimsy charges, and his arrest is used as a symbol of the Ministry's desperation. Meanwhile, Amelia Bones, a true symbol of integrity, dies off-screen with no funeral, no eulogy, and no lingering grief. Amelia's character also represents a larger problem in the series. The Ministry of Magic as a setting lacks internal consistency. There are plenty of named figures, Barty Crouch Sr., Pius Thickness, Mafalda Hopkirk, but very few of them receive meaningful arcs. Amelia Bones had the power and authority to serve as a touchstone, a compass in the chaos, yet Rowling treated her like a background prop. It's as if she were afraid to give the Ministry heroes of its own, as if all moral clarity had to come from Hogwarts or the Order of the Phoenix. Number 16, Michael Corner. Michael Corner was a Ravenclaw, a detail as brief and unassuming as the boy himself, whose presence fluttered on the edges of the Harry Potter narrative like a torn page that never quite found its place. He appeared first in the backdrop of Ginny Weasley's life, not as a brother's best friend, not as a prophecy-bound hero, but as a boyfriend. That fact alone should have rooted him more deeply into the fabric of the story, yet he remained little more than a name. In a world where minor characters shine with memorable quirks, be it Luna's radish earrings or Neville's clumsy valor, Michael Corner is almost spectral. He is there, and yet he is not. Ginny met him at the Yule Ball during her 3rd year. Michael's first mention occurs in Order of the Phoenix, when Harry notices Ginny had started dating someone. The news is delivered casually, almost as an afterthought, through the filter of Ron's disapproval. He's in Ravenclaw, he's in the year above, and he's called Michael Corner, Ginny tells them. A name, a house, a relationship. But nothing more. Not what he thinks, or how he speaks, or even what he looks like. He isn't described by his intellect or wit, as one might expect from a Ravenclaw. Instead, the only defining trait he is given is his involvement with Ginny. That's the lens through which readers are asked to view him. Michael joins Dumbledore's army, along with his friends Terry Boot and Anthony Goldstein. He becomes a part of something much greater than a school romance, yet even within that resistance group where students like Neville Longbottom evolve into fierce warriors, and even shy, nervous girls like Susan Bones find a voice, Michael remains faint. He casts spells, presumably attends the meetings, and trains under Harry's guidance, but he does not emerge with a single defining act. In fact, his most notable moment within Dumbledore's army is not what he does, but how he reacts to Ginny outperforming him. When Gryffindor beats Ravenclaw at Quidditch in Order of the Phoenix, it is Ginny who scores the winning goal. The aftermath is quietly damning for Michael. Rowling writes, Michael Corner didn't seem too happy about it, and that was it. The relationship ends reportedly because of his sulking over the Quidditch match. Ginny moves on to Dean Thomas. Michael, meanwhile, fades into the ink of the next chapter. There's no introspection, no comment on his feelings about the battle against Umbridge, or what joining Dumbledore's army meant to him. His defining arc is being dumped. It feels especially stark when compared to Cho Chang, another underdeveloped character, but one whose emotional turmoil is at least explored. Cho cries for Cedric, grapples with grief, loyalty, and romance, and although she too becomes reduced to a romantic interest, the reader is invited into her internal conflict. Michael receives no such courtesy. He is merely the boy Ginny dated, resented her success, and disappeared from her story. Rowling, a writer known for layering her characters with subtle traits and internal conflicts, even when they appear briefly, somehow overlooked Michael. This absence is puzzling. Ravenclaws are rarely explored in depth, and Michael could have been a much-needed lens into that house's culture. What does logic look like under pressure? How does intellect manifest in a resistance group like Dumbledore's army? Terry Boot, though equally peripheral, at least contributes with observations and enthusiasm. Even Zacharias Smith, though a Hufflepuff and thoroughly unpleasant, is memorable in his skepticism. Michael, in contrast, offers no friction, no sharp insight, no moment of clarity. He could have illuminated how Ravenclaws resist. Do they challenge authority through wit? Do they debate ideology in corridors? Do they fear Voldemort's rise in the abstract as a disruption of reason and logic? These questions go unanswered. In the Battle of Hogwarts, Michael Corner fights. He returns to Hogwarts with the DA, ready to face the Death Eaters. His name is among the roll call of those brave enough to stand with Harry when it matters most. But even this act of courage is offered with no emotional weight. There is no description of how he changed, of what brought him back, or what he stood to lose. His presence is recorded the same way one might list ingredients in a potion, necessary perhaps, but devoid of flavour. Michael Corner returned to fight. That sentence could carry so much, yet it is burdened by nothing. The contrast with Seamus Finnegan is glaring. Seamus begins as a doubter, someone who believes the prophet over Harry, but eventually comes around and becomes one of the staunchest fighters in the Battle of Hogwarts. His arc is visible, his growth tangible. Readers see him shout, argue, cry, and bleed. He is a minor character, yes, but never a hollow one. Michael had the same opportunity. He, too, could have begun as uncertain, critical, even arrogant, a classic Ravenclaw trait gone unchecked. He could have clashed with Harry over methods, challenged Hermione on spell theory, or provided a cynical yet sharp analysis of the Order. But none of this materializes. Even his friendships are vague. He is often mentioned alongside Terry Boot and Anthony Goldstein, but their dynamic is never explored. Are they childhood friends, study partners, rivals? We never know. When Fred and George have each other, when Dean and Seamus share jokes and loyalty, when even Ernie Macmillan and Justin Finch-Fletchley have camaraderie rooted in house pride, Michael stands alone. And in a story that so frequently draws strength from friendship, that isolation is jarring. It's ironic that the boy once paired with Ginny, a girl who grows into such a bold, independent force, should be so poorly drawn. Ginny's story is one of resilience. She survives possession by Tom Riddle, finds her own voice, and never allows herself to be overshadowed by the men around her. She becomes a warrior, a rebel, a Quidditch champion, and eventually Harry's partner. The contrast between her vivid growth and Michael's static sketch is almost cruel. Their relationship could have illuminated what Ginny sought before Harry, what her emotional needs were, how she coped with being the girl in the shadow of 6 brothers. Michael could have helped us understand her better, but he wasn't given that chance. His limited portrayal also robs readers of seeing more of Ravenclaw's interior world. So little is shared of that house beyond Luna Lovegood's delightful oddities and Cho Chang's mourning. There are no classes taught by Ravenclaws, no passwords to their common room, no distinct traditions. When the series spends so much time in Gryffindor Tower or even the Slytherin dungeons, Ravenclaw remains shrouded. Michael, as an insider, could have pulled that curtain back. He might have offered Harry a glimpse into Ravenclaw's logic-driven view of Dumbledore's army, or even provided a dissenting opinion during the resistance meetings. Instead, he offers silence. Even when discussing characters that ultimately serve small narrative roles, Rowling often imbues them with colourful humanity. Marietta Edgecombe, who betrays Dumbledore's army, is defined by her loyalty to her mother and her discomfort with rebellion. Lavender Brown is shown as excitable, infatuated, and ultimately brave in the final battle, but Michael doesn't even get a defining flaw. He sulks. He loses a game. He's left. There's also no indication of what happens to him after the war. While readers are given updates on Dean, Seamus, even minor Death Eaters like Draco and Gregory Goyle, Michael Corner disappears entirely. Did he survive? Did he return to school? Did he reconcile with Ginny? Or ever talk to Harry again? In a universe where Rowling has shared the career paths and children of peripheral characters, Michael's future is a black hole. The narrative simply forgets him. It would be tempting to argue that Michael was never meant to matter, that he served a structural purpose, to show Ginny's independence, to provide a pre-Harry boyfriend, and nothing more. But this argument collapses under the weight of Rowling's own writing. The Harry Potter universe is one that delights in the small and the overlooked. From the eccentricities of Xenophilius Lovegood to the redemption arc of Kreacher, no one is truly insignificant. So why not Michael? He didn't need a sprawling subplot or dramatic arc. A few lines of dialogue, a glimpse of his inner world, or even a moment of vulnerability during a DA meeting could have redeemed him. He could have confided in someone about his fears. He could have questioned the morality of the spells they were learning. He could have laughed or cried or told Harry that his leadership inspired him, but he did none of these things. And that absence is deafening. Michael Corner had the bones of a character, a clever boy, slightly bitter, romantically entangled with a future hero, brave enough to fight, but ultimately left behind. The tragedy is not that he failed to grow. The tragedy is that we were never allowed to see him try. In a saga where even ghosts are given origin stories and portraits whisper forgotten wisdom, Michael Corner remains the boy who simply vanished. Number 17, Katie Bell. Katie Bell soared through the pages of Harry Potter like a comet, brilliant for a moment, then lost to the night. Introduced early as one of Gryffindor's Quidditch chasers, Katie was part of Harry's first year, present during the iconic games where house pride clashed in the sky. She had skill, confidence, and a place in the team well before Harry ever held a Nimbus 2000. She was there, gliding alongside Angelina Johnson and Alicia Spinnet, forming the core of the Gryffindor attack. But while Angelina and Alicia had their arcs, however brief, Katie remained curiously undefined. She played, she cheered, she vanished. Her name appeared in match lineups, her presence marked in scenes like a background detail in an old painting, visible yet never the subject. The books told us she was dedicated, one of Oliver Wood's trusted players. But the narrative never lingered on her thoughts, her motivations, her voice. J.K. Rowling, with her gift for breathing life into even the most minor characters, seemed to have forgotten Katie in the long shadow of more prominent storylines. There were no inner fears exposed, no triumphs celebrated beyond the pitch. And then came Half-Blood Prince, and a single, horrifying scene that briefly pulled her into the centre. It happened on a cold Saturday. Katie, accompanied by her friend Leanne, returned from Hogsmeade with a package she insisted on delivering herself. The package, a cursed necklace, wrapped and bewitched, was meant for Dumbledore. Unknowingly manipulated through a web of dark intentions, Katie touched the necklace. What followed was described with chilling clarity. Her eyes rolled up into her head, she screamed, and then she was lifted into the air by an invisible force. The scene, so vivid and violent, disrupted the everyday flow of Hogwarts life like a blade tearing through fabric. This was Katie's moment, her chance to become more than a name in Quidditch statistics. Her body, frozen and cursed, floated in the air before being slammed back to earth. Horror rippled through the students. Slughorn stumbled forward, aghast. Harry, Ron, and Hermione watched helplessly. But most importantly, readers finally felt something shift. For once, Katie Bell wasn't just a player in the air, she was a victim of the war creeping into the school's walls. Yet just as quickly as the narrative granted her presence, it withdrew it. The event was traumatic, and rightly so. Katie was rushed to St. Mungo's Hospital. The text tells us that she was lucky not to be killed. And then, nothing. Days passed. The school year marched on. Slughorn hosted parties. Harry chased Draco. Dumbledore delved into Horcruxes. But Katie remained out of sight and out of mind, locked away in a hospital ward, while the story moved on without her. When she returned later, it was mentioned in passing, Katie Bell had rejoined the Gryffindor team, as if she had merely been out with a cold. But readers remembered the image of Katie suspended in the air, her limbs flailing against unseen forces, lingered long after the plot chose to forget. What kind of emotional trauma does one endure after surviving a dark curse designed for assassination? Did she wake up in St. Mungo's screaming? Did she fear her friends, unsure of whom to trust? Did she lie awake at night, wondering why her hands reached for that necklace against her will? The books are silent. This silence is more than just a missing subplot. It's a missed opportunity for character development in a series that otherwise excels at turning minor figures into beloved individuals. Think of Neville Longbottom, once the forgetful boy with a toad who became a symbol of courage. Or Luna Lovegood, introduced as odd and ethereal, who grew into one of Harry's most loyal allies. Katie had been there just as long. She deserved a similar arc. She deserved depth. What makes Katie's absence so glaring is that her incident marked one of the darkest turns in Half-Blood Prince. The cursed necklace was an act of attempted murder within Hogwarts grounds. It was a clear sign that Voldemort's influence was seeping into the castle through students. That moment should have reverberated throughout the narrative, yet Katie's pain became just another plot device, a narrative tool to advance suspicion toward Draco Malfoy. She was never allowed to be the center of her own trauma. The incident also revealed the terrifying truth of the Imperious Curse, or at least some manipulation bordering on possession. Katie was not herself when she insisted on delivering the package. This opens a world of questions. Was she enchanted, threatened, subtly cursed, without her knowledge? The novel never clarifies, leaving readers with haunting ambiguity. It's chilling to imagine a student walking unknowingly toward her doom under someone else's command, and then waking up to learn she had almost become an accomplice in a murder. Her friend Leanne, who tried to stop her, is another character who vanishes into the background. Together, their shared trauma might have forged something deeper. Instead, the narrative discards them both. In a school where Dumbledore encourages unity and resilience, we never see Katie speaking at assemblies, warning others about the darkness that touched her. She could have become a voice of caution, a symbol of survival. Instead, she is shelved like a broken broomstick. Katie's return to the Gryffindor Quidditch team is treated with casual indifference. She plays, Gryffindor loses, and that's that. There's no mention of whether she still hears echoes of that scream in her mind, no sign that her teammates tiptoe around her, unsure how to speak. No counselor talks to her, no professor visits her bedside. She is allowed no recovery, no processing. It is as if she simply rebooted and flew again. This stands in stark contrast to other characters who suffer trauma. After the graveyard scene in Goblet of Fire, Harry has nightmares, shakes with fear, argues with Dumbledore, and doubts his sanity. When Ron is poisoned, Hermione weeps by his bed, but Katie, attacked by an artifact of dark magic, is denied even a monologue. She is the only student victimized so visibly by Voldemort's schemes within the school and given no voice. Even in Deathly Hallows, when the Battle of Hogwarts brings old faces back, Katie's name is fleeting. She fights, she's part of the defense, but does she tremble seeing another cursed object? Does she avoid touching anything unfamiliar? Does she hesitate before stepping onto the battlefield where curses fly like arrows? Again, nothing. She becomes part of the scenery, present but without soul. A character like Katie could have represented something vital, the cost of war on innocent bystanders. Not every student is Harry, burdened with destiny. Some, like Katie, are just there to study, play Quidditch, and survive. Her journey could have been a mirror to those who are hurt not by choice, but by proximity. Her healing could have inspired others. Her fears could have reflected the real terror of living under a regime of dark magic. But that story was never told. We hear more about Lavender Brown's squeals than Katie's thoughts. We are shown Cho Chang's tears and Ginny's temper, but Katie's trauma remains invisible. Even Colin Creevey, who appears far less frequently, is granted a death that stirs the heart. Katie Bell floats, screams, and is shelved. What makes this more tragic is that the books imply she's brave. She was on the Quidditch team for years, respected, athletic, dedicated. She had the heart of a Gryffindor, so why not show it? Why not let her battle back from fear? A scene of her flying again, not just physically but emotionally reclaiming the sky, would have soared in readers' hearts, but we get none of it. Fans have noticed, forums and fan-fiction sites often reimagine Katie's life post-trauma. Some envision her forming a support group for students affected by dark magic. Others paint her as an Auror, determined to prevent others from falling as she did. In these retellings, Katie becomes what Rowling didn't allow: resilient, complex, real. The absence in canon creates a vacuum that fans rush to fill. The moment when Katie is cursed remains one of the most terrifying in the series, not because of gore, but because of how sudden, cold, and real it feels. It reminds us that in a world of dragons and Death Eaters, true fear lies in being powerless, unaware, and used. Katie embodied that terror for a moment, and then she was lost to the margins. The quote, "Her eyes rolled up into her head," she screamed, lingers, but it is never followed by, "and then she rose." Rowling, in her vast tapestry of triumphs and tragedies, left a thread dangling. Katie Bell, the girl who flew through the sky with confidence and fell through the air with no control, never got to speak her truth. She deserved more. She still does. Number 18, Roger Davies. Roger Davies sat at the Ravenclaw table during meals, his prefect badge gleaming just enough to catch the light of the enchanted ceiling in the Great Hall. When the Triwizard Tournament arrived, so did his one moment of narrative importance, escorting Fleur Delacour to the Yule Ball. Beyond that, he vanished into the fog of background characters, despite being a house Quidditch captain and presumably one of the most prominent students in his year. Therein lies the real enigma, not Roger Davies the student, but Roger Davies the missed opportunity. By the time Goblet of Fire unfolded, readers had grown familiar with Gryffindors, tolerated Slytherins, and even caught glimpses of Hufflepuff depth through Cedric Diggory. Ravenclaw, however, remained largely unexplored terrain. Apart from Cho Chang, who served more as Harry's emotional subplot than an independent arc, there was little insight into the house that prided itself on intelligence, wit, and learning. Roger Davies could have changed that. He could have been a mirror opposite of Harry, strategic, calculating, ambitious, in a different, more cerebral way. Davies's role as Quidditch captain should have granted him a spotlight. Oliver Wood's obsession with tactics made him a memorable fixture in earlier books. Angelina Johnson, who later captained Gryffindor, had a personality sharp enough to rival her broomstick turns. In contrast, Davies, tasked with leading an entire team, remained a ghost. He never voiced his strategies, rallied his team, or confronted rivals. He never interacted with Harry during matches, though Ravenclaw faced Gryffindor regularly. Even Marcus Flint from Slytherin, despite his crudeness, had depth of action. Roger had none. In Prisoner of Azkaban, during a Ravenclaw-Gryffindor match, Harry faces Cho Chang for the first time. Roger, presumably present as her team's leader, says and does nothing of note. Not a single motivational speech, not even a complaint about Harry's firebolt, which outclassed every broomstick on the field. A real character might have grumbled, plotted, or even restructured his team, but Roger doesn't. He simply fades into the grass of the Quidditch pitch. His most iconic moment, if it can be called that, arrives in Goblet of Fire. Fleur Delacour, the Beauxbaton champion, enters Hogwarts like an ethereal breeze, enchanting boys in every corridor. Davies, older than Harry and certainly bolder, seizes the opportunity and asks her to the Yule Ball. It's a move that suggests confidence, but what follows is a cartoonish gag. Harry observes him snogging Fleur by the rose bushes, or sitting next to her with his mouth open looking stunned. That is the sum of his arc, comic relief by way of infatuation. No conversation, no character insight, just a teenage boy drooling over a vela. Roger's portrayal becomes more frustrating when one considers the possibilities. Imagine him as a rival, not in love necessarily, but in brilliance. A character like Davies could have challenged Harry intellectually, manipulating events to gain favour or recognition. Where Harry led by instinct and loyalty, Roger could have led by logic and ambition. Think of the friction, the philosophical tension. Think of a Ravenclaw who truly embodied his house's values. Instead, readers were given a face without a mind. Joanne Rowling's intricate character work is well documented. From the subtle growth of Neville Longbottom to the moral complexity of Severus Snape, she excels at layering even minor characters, which makes the absence of depth in Roger all the more conspicuous. He could have anchored Ravenclaw's presence in the books beyond Cho and Luna Lovegood, who wouldn't even arrive until Order of the Phoenix. In the Triwizard Year, Ravenclaw had the chance to shine through its senior students, and yet all readers got was a boy with a date. The idea of Roger as a metaphor for underused Ravenclaws is difficult to ignore. Ravenclaw is the only house not to produce a Triwizard champion, a founder-related artifact of note, or a narrative leader. Even Hufflepuff, so often the butt of house jokes, boasted Cedric Diggory, who embodied dignity, fairness, and strength. Why not Roger? Why couldn't he have questioned Dumbledore's favoritism or challenged Harry's rapid ascent in fame and authority? He might have resented the fact that despite being older, a Quidditch captain and a prefect, he was utterly overshadowed by a fourth year. He could have formed a quiet alliance with students from other houses, subtly manoeuvring influence in the background. Maybe he saw Fleur as a way to elevate his own standing. Perhaps his interest in her wasn't mere lust, but strategy, a union of sorts between intellect and glamour. But again, nothing. No interiority, no action, just stares. In Order of the Phoenix, when Dumbledore's army is formed, Roger is notably absent. Yet here was an excellent opportunity to revisit him. As a seventh year, would he have supported the group, opposed it, tried to take leadership from Harry? He had the seniority, the house support, and the Quidditch respect. Maybe he would have challenged Harry's authority, offering tactical alternatives. Maybe he believed rules were there for a reason. Rowling gave us none of that. He had already disappeared, a casualty of undeveloped world-building. There's also the issue of gender dynamics. The books often frame romantic subplots as lenses through which to understand characters. Ron's awkward courtship of Lavender, Harry's turmoil over Cho, even Hermione's tension with Victor Crumb, they reveal aspects of personality, insecurity, growth. Roger's pairing with Fleur does none of this. It renders him inert. He's simply a warm body to sit beside the school's most alluring girl, a prop in her glow. The Roger Davies meme has endured for precisely that reason. He's not remembered for leadership, strategy, or dialogue. He's remembered for sitting slack-jawed, overwhelmed by beauty. In a series that celebrates bravery, cleverness, and emotional maturity, he represents none of those things. This becomes especially ironic, considering his house affiliation. Ravenclaws are meant to be curious, composed, sharp. Roger is none of those. He's a punchline. Contrast him with someone like Percy Weasley. Though pompous and flawed, Percy is deeply characterized. His thirst for order, his loyalty to the ministry, his eventual disillusionment, all of it serves the story. Roger, by comparison, is a cardboard cutout, a name on a list, a pretty face on a broomstick. The very fact that fans remember him at all is a testament not to Rowling's writing, but to the vacuum he left behind. Even aesthetically, he could have stood out. Was he the type to read obscure magical theory? Did he duel well? Was he competitive on the Quidditch field? Did he hold grudges? None of these questions are answered, not even once. He is a prefect and a captain, two roles that require decision-making and charisma, yet he is given no decisions and no charisma. He merely is. There's an alternate timeline where Roger Davies grows jealous of Harry's fame, where he seeks Fleur's attention as a way to upstage younger students, where he spars with Cedric Diggory both on and off the pitch. Perhaps he even questions the Triwizard process, doubting Harry's legitimacy. Imagine a scene where he challenges Harry during a DA meeting, arguing that reckless wand work is no substitute for studied technique. That would have added flavor, tension, growth, but instead, silence. When Fleur is left emotionally shattered by her sister's near death in the third task, there is no mention of Roger. Did he comfort her? Was he embarrassed by how superficial their connection had been? Did he walk away? Did he stay by her side, if only to be seen doing so? Rowling could have inserted a single line to answer these questions. She didn't. The silence was louder than dialogue. Even Luna Lovegood, introduced later and known for her eccentricity, became a beloved figure, not because of quirks alone, but because of values. She was loyal, insightful, emotionally wise. She believed in strange things, yes, but she also believed in people. Roger, on the other hand, believed in nothing, or if he did, the reader never learned it. He floated at the edge of events, orbiting narrative gravity, but never pulled in. It's tempting to imagine Roger's post-Hogwarts life. Did he join the ministry, play professional Quidditch, become a professor, or retreat into magical academia? Did he ever reflect on how invisible he had been at a school where so many stood out? Perhaps he looked back with frustration. Or perhaps he never noticed. Perhaps his tragedy is not that he lacked screen time, but that he never realized he was on the stage to begin with. Ultimately, Roger Davies is a character shaped by absence, not a void like Tom Riddle's secrets or a mystery like Snape's loyalties, but a literary blank space. He could have expanded the meaning of Ravenclaw. He could have been a foil, a rival, a leader, or a disappointment. He could have been clever, petty, honourable, or cruel. He could have been anything, but he wasn't. He was merely there, and sometimes that is the saddest kind of character of all. Number 19, Andromeda Tonks. Andromeda Tonks stood in the shadows of her sisters, yet she made the boldest choice of them all. Among the ancient and noble house of Black, where blood purity was prized above love, compassion, or even humanity, she alone turned away. Andromeda's story is not one of background noise. It's a tale of rebellion, heartbreak, and quiet strength that J.K. Rowling sadly left largely unexplored. In a series that gives room even to portraits on walls and ghosts in hallways, the woman who defied her entire lineage is granted barely a paragraph's worth of legacy, and yet she could have stood as a foil to the madness of Bellatrix and the cold calculation of Narcissa, offering a third path, one of moral clarity and love unbound by blood. It begins with a decision. Andromeda, born between Bellatrix and Narcissa, was raised in the same dark house, likely subjected to the same indoctrination. The Black family tree, proudly stitched with generations of pureblood names, becomes a tomb of expectations. Bellatrix embraced it with fanaticism, Narcissa with pragmatism, but Andromeda shattered it. She married Ted Tonks, a Muggle-born wizard, knowing what that meant. Her name was scorched off the family tapestry. Literally, this act, this erasure, is not just a dramatic symbol. It is a profound act of self-sacrifice, and yet Rowling only gives us a glimpse of this. "My mother is Andromeda," says Tonks to Harry. "She was disowned for marrying Dad. Ted Tonks, you know, blood traitor, married a Muggle-born family, cut her off." That is nearly the sum total of Andromeda's presence in the 7-book saga. A woman who made a decision so radical that it severed her from everything she knew appears only once in person, briefly, in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, when she receives Harry, Ron, and Hermione at her door after they escape Malfoy Manor. Her only direct moment is fleeting. The woman who opened the door had wispy mouse-coloured hair and a look of alarm on her face. "What has happened to my grandson?" she said, her voice trembling. A woman who has lost her husband, her daughter, and soon her son-in-law, and still she stands. The emotional potential is staggering. Imagine the nights after her name was burned off the tapestry, the silence from her sisters, the shock of losing everything for love. Yet she did it. She chose Ted. In a world that punishes women for breaking rules, especially those written in family and blood, Andromeda dared to rewrite her life. Her story could have paralleled, even deepened, the central theme of choice in the series, the very thing that Dumbledore constantly tells Harry distinguishes him from Voldemort. "It is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities." Andromeda's choice is arguably more difficult than Sirius Black's. Sirius was a boy. He had the safety net of being male in a patriarchal society and the thrill of rebellion as a form of identity. Andromeda was a woman expected to marry well and uphold the family's legacy through children. In leaving, she didn't just disgrace her name, she doomed herself to be forgotten by those who had once called her daughter and sister. And yet there is no lament for this woman. No moment where Harry or any other character reflects on the enormity of her decision. Her pain remains silent, and that is the real tragedy. Contrast this with Bellatrix. Bellatrix, the psychotic Death Eater, receives pages of backstory, intense moments of dialogue, and even a grand death scene. She is the Black sister we are told to hate, and yet we know her. Her madness has dimension. Her loyalty to Voldemort is disturbing but detailed. Narcissa, too, has a beautifully executed arc. Her moment in Deathly Hallows, where she lies to Voldemort about Harry being dead to protect Draco, is rightfully celebrated. She is not kind, but she is complex. But Andromeda, she loved more, lost more, and yet we are not allowed to know her. One could argue that Andromeda's silence serves the narrative purpose of focusing on the younger generation, but that ignores what her presence could have offered. In a story so deeply about family, both the blood kind and the chosen kind, Andromeda embodies both loss and loyalty. Imagine her as a mentor to Harry in the aftermath of Sirius's death. She, too, lost a family to Voldemort's ideology. She, too, understands what it means to grieve and still carry on. But Rowling leaves that role to Molly Weasley and Lupin, missing an opportunity for a richer emotional dynamic. The irony is that Andromeda survives the war. She loses her husband, she loses her daughter, yet she raises Teddy Lupin, her grandson, alone. There's almost mythic symmetry here. This woman, disowned for marrying a Muggle-born, becomes the guardian of a half-blood child, orphaned by war. In another universe, this would be the seed of a powerful narrative. Andromeda teaching Teddy about both loss and love, helping him understand where he came from and how to survive a world that still hasn't fully escaped its prejudices. What's missing is the chance to see Andromeda feel. When Tonks dies during the Battle of Hogwarts, we see Lupin's body, her hand outstretched toward him, but we never see the aftermath for the mother who lost her only child. There is no funeral scene, no memory of her grief. The woman who defied her family for love, who sacrificed everything, who paid the price with silence and solitude, is simply gone from the narrative. It is as if Rowling feared too many strong female characters in the same family might dilute the drama. Even fan theories have tried to breathe life into her absence. Some readers suggest that Andromeda's resemblance to Bellatrix was more than skin-deep, that perhaps she too had to suppress the darker instincts of her lineage. This could have been explored. What does it mean to be the sister of a murderer? To see your blood reflected in someone who tortures and kills for pleasure? Does Andromeda ever wonder what separated her from Bellatrix? What twist of fate made her choose light when her sister chose fire? Does she ever question if there's a sliver of darkness in her too? The family parallels are rich. Bellatrix and Andromeda both marry outside their family's approval, one to a Muggle-born, the other to a sadistic cult leader. Narcissa stays within bounds, choosing Lucius Malfoy. Each sister responds to the Black family's expectations differently. Yet only Bellatrix and Narcissa are given the space to evolve on screen. Andromeda is denied this arc. In the final reckoning, her survival feels like a footnote when it should have been a full chapter. She could have been a confidant for Hermione, who also faces prejudice for being Muggle-born. She could have spoken to Ginny, offering wisdom about standing strong against the expectations of a pure-blood family. Even in small scenes, Andromeda could have been the echo of resistance that reminded characters and readers that rebellion isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's a woman choosing love over lineage and bearing the silence that follows. The Black family tapestry, displayed at 12 Grimmauld Place, carries a grotesque sort of pride. Its burn marks are supposed to shame those who defied the family. But what if each burn told a story of courage? Andromeda's is one. She didn't fall in battle or raise a wand in protest, but her very life was a rebellion, and Rowling, with all her talent for weaving past and present, could have allowed that story to surface. Instead, we get a whisper in the wind. The impact of her character lingers despite her absence. Teddy Lupin is loved. He grows up, presumably safe and cared for. That alone is a quiet miracle. After so much death, here is a child raised in love. But the hands that hold him, Andromeda's hands, go unseen. We never get to read the moment she first takes him into her arms. We don't know what she told him about his mother, or his father, or about the man she loved so much that she let the world erase her for him. That silence could have been a powerful literary choice, but in this case it feels more like a missed opportunity. Andromeda is the kind of character who haunts the corners of a story. You find her in the pause between paragraphs, in the untold backstory of Ted Tonks, in the silence after Tonks says, "My mother was disowned." She's a shadow on the wall behind Bellatrix's fire and Narcissa's chill. And that's the injustice, because she was never a shadow. She was a flame that chose not to burn others. Her presence could have illuminated the cost of goodness. Sirius's rebellion was flashy and ultimately doomed. Andromeda's was quiet and enduring. She lost everything: family, reputation, certainty. And still she raised a child in love and then a grandchild, all while the world forgot her name. If Bellatrix is the symbol of destructive obsession, Andromeda is the symbol of quiet endurance. She should have been remembered for it. Rowling crafted a vast, intricate universe, rich with lore and characters, but in doing so she left some of its most compelling stories locked behind closed doors. Andromeda Tonks is one such door, untouched, unopened. Perhaps in a world that's eager to revisit Hogwarts again and again, someone will finally turn the knob and let her story unfold. Until then, she remains the lost sister. Not the mad one, not the proud one, but the brave one, the one who chose love. Number 20. Charlie Weasley. Charlie Weasley stood on the edges of the story like smoke rising from a dragon's nostrils, visible for a moment, suggestive of something powerful, but quickly disappearing into the sky. J.K. Rowling introduced him with the rest of the Weasley family, placing him as the second eldest brother of Ron and the one who, unlike Percy's rules, or Fred and George's laughter, chose a life away from it all. Romania, dragons, scorch marks on his boots, and stories no one ever really heard. Readers knew he existed but never truly met him. Not the way we met Bill, not the way we came to understand the brave madness of Fred and George, or the insufferable ambition of Percy. Charlie was mentioned with affection, spoken of with respect, but remained mostly invisible. And that is one of the series' most curious omissions. From the very first book, hints of Charlie's character flicker briefly. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Hagrid contacts him to collect Norbert the Norwegian Ridgeback, writing to him as someone dependable and trusted. "My brother Charlie's in Romania studying dragons," Ron explains, and from that moment the image is planted. A red-haired, rough-handed young man, probably with a fireproof cloak and a laugh like a campfire. But then Charlie vanishes into the mist of background references. He doesn't come to the Burrow during Harry's second summer. He isn't present at the Quidditch World Cup. Even during the grave moments of the Second Wizarding War, he's never truly placed beside the others. And yet, his presence haunts the story. A dragon wrangler in a world that too often clings to order, Charlie made the choice to step away from British wizarding society, from the Ministry of Magic, from the expected Weasley family roles. Bill became a Gringotts curse-breaker, Percy a civil servant, and the twins entrepreneurs. But Charlie walked into fire. He chose creatures over people, the thrill of claws and wings over the dullness of desks and meetings. His life, had it been written, would have been full of peril, of scars, of strange friendships with beings older than human civilization, but all we have are breadcrumbs. In Goblet of Fire, when dragons take the stage at the Triwizard Tournament, Charlie appears again, briefly, beautifully. He is there helping to wrangle the Hungarian horntail. Rowling writes, 4 men were walking toward them, carrying large, heavy-looking nets between them, and the man in front was the unmistakable red-haired, freckled, stocky Charlie Weasley. That's all, a glimpse, no story, no background. The man who works with dragons comes to help handle dragons and says barely anything. There is no reflection on his life, no insight into how he feels about his brother competing against a dragon. This was a missed opportunity of rare magnitude. Charlie's character had the potential to add a unique narrative texture to the series, the wizard who walks the wild path. He could have been a bridge between the magical and the primal, between spells and instinct. In a story often centered on rules, on education, on institutional power, Hogwarts, the Ministry, the Order, the Death Eaters, Charlie could have been the outsider hero. A magical ecologist of sorts, a dragon conservationist. Someone who saw magic in its rawest form, who carried burn scars like medals, who learned not from books but from claws, fire and wind. He could have shown a different kind of courage. Where others battled with wands, Charlie might have wrestled with natural forces. Where others dealt with laws and curses, he could have negotiated with living myths. What was his life like among dragons? How did he learn their language, their rhythms? Did he lose friends? Was he ever close to death? Did he ride a dragon once? Was he burned, saving a clutch of eggs from poachers? We are told he works in Romania, but we never follow him there. We are told he's brave, but we never see it. Rowling left these doors closed. Even in moments that called for his presence, he remained a footnote. The battle of the Astronomy Tower, the wedding of Bill and Fleur, the invasion of the Burrow. In Deathly Hallows, when the final war looms and all hands are needed, Charlie arrives late to the Battle of Hogwarts. He doesn't lead a team of dragon tamers into battle. He doesn't fly in on a ridgeback or confront a giant. He joins the fight, we are told, but remains in the background. Charlie arrived shortly after his mother, Rowling writes. That's all. No scenes, no wounds, no legacy. The films, of course, erase him completely. Charlie is never seen. Not once. Bill appears. Even Fleur's little sister Gabrielle makes it into a frame. But Charlie? Absent. His story, if one can call it that, lives only in lines of dialogue and family photographs. The cinematic Harry Potter universe erased one of the most potentially vivid characters, turning him into a ghost before he was ever flesh. What might his inclusion have done for the story? Imagine Harry, after dealing with the bureaucracy and suspicion of the Ministry, visiting Romania during a summer to learn more about dragons. Imagine him meeting Charlie properly, a man covered in soot, half wild, living in tents beside fire-breathing monsters. Imagine a scene where Harry learns that not all magic is learned with a wand, that some is earned by bleeding, by waiting, by listening. Charlie could have taught him something different from Dumbledore, from Lupin, from Hagrid. A lesson about instinct, trust, and humility before nature. Even Ron's development might have been deepened through Charlie. The Weasley brothers are a gallery of personalities. Bill, the cool older brother with the fang earring. Percy, the pompous one. Fred and George, the tricksters. But Charlie remains Ron's quiet shadow. What did Ron think of him? Did he look up to him? Was he jealous that Charlie lived far from their parents' expectations? Did they write letters? In Order of the Phoenix, when Ron becomes a prefect, Mrs. Weasley compares him to his brothers. Fred and George have never been prefects, she says, and Ron mumbles, Charlie wasn't either. That's a rare moment of character colour. Charlie then was like the twins in spirit, free, unbound, but unlike the twins he left. Even Ginny could have drawn strength from Charlie's defiance. In many ways, Ginny is the wildest of the siblings, fierce, independent, passionate. What if she had confided in Charlie? What if she saw him as a kindred soul, the brother who didn't ask her to be smaller, quieter, safer? Rowling wrote the Weasley family with warmth and dimension, but never gave us the bonds that might have existed beyond the walls of the burrow. Charlie could have been that older sibling who taught Ginny to hold her ground and never shrink from fire. There is an unspoken tragedy in how we treat those who choose different paths. Charlie, by choosing dragons over desks, is silently exiled from the narrative. It reflects something true about the wizarding world, how little it values those who step outside its institutions. Hogwarts sorts students into categories, The Ministry categorizes magical creatures, the Order organizes resistance, but Charlie chooses none of these. He chooses wildness, and for that, the story lets him fade. Charlie's absence also erases an opportunity to explore magical conservationism. The magical world is full of extraordinary creatures, many of them endangered or misunderstood. Rowling touches on this through Hagrid's passion, but never dives deep. Charlie could have led a subplot about dragon poaching, magical habitat destruction, or the ethics of breeding magical beasts. His life could have been a doorway into global wizarding issues beyond Britain, showing us the magical cultures of Eastern Europe, the laws that protect dragons, or the smuggling networks that threaten them. In Fantastic Beasts, Rowling would later explore some of these themes through Newt Scamander, but Charlie came first. He was the prototype, a man who loved creatures more than crowds, who found purpose in danger, not fame. And yet, while Newt receives films, Charlie doesn't even get a chapter. His bachelorhood is also quietly noted but never explored. Rowling mentions he's not the marrying kind, suggesting he's happiest among his dragons. This choice, rare among her adult characters, could have added richness to the series' understanding of identity. Charlie lives a fulfilling life without a romantic subplot. He represents those who choose a different kind of intimacy, the bond with nature, with risk, with wonder. But again, this angle is never developed. It's possible, even probable, that Rowling never intended to make Charlie a central character. He served a narrative purpose, to receive Norbert, to help with dragons, to show the diversity of the Weasley clan. But fiction has a way of revealing its own gaps, and in Charlie's case the gap echoes. Readers wanted more, not because he was crucial to the plot, but because he symbolized something rare, the magic that lives outside of institutions. The hero who walks away from the story and builds another one off the page. A fan favorite, despite his absence, Charlie remains one of the saga's most charismatic mysteries. There are fan fictions dedicated solely to imagining his adventures. He's often portrayed as scarred, fearless, patient, and deeply loyal. Some imagine him befriending centaurs, others depict him as the secret guardian of dragon sanctuaries. He becomes what Rowling never allowed him to be, real. In the end, Charlie Weasley is a testament to the power of the unseen, a character built not on scenes or arcs, but on suggestion. In a world so rich with detail, it is the shadows that sometimes speak loudest. And in that silence, readers imagine a firelit world of scaled giants and the wizard who walked among them, smiling not for the cameras, but for the sky. Number 21, Aberforth Dumbledore. Aberforth Dumbledore is a name that flickers in the margins of the Harry Potter series, like a shadow cast by a brighter, more commanding light. As the younger brother of Albus Dumbledore, he stands in stark contrast to the grandeur, charisma, and complexity of the famous headmaster of Hogwarts. And yet, despite being linked by blood to one of the most influential wizards in the magical world, Aberforth is left with little more than an outline, a sketch that hints at a deeper story. Rowling gave us fragments: his ownership of the Hog's Head, his role in the Battle of Hogwarts, the infamous incident involving a goat. But those glimpses are not enough. The truth is, Aberforth Dumbledore is a character brimming with tragedy, moral struggle, and human depth. His story, if told properly, could have added new layers not only to the Dumbledore family, but to the core themes of the series: pride, guilt, forgiveness, and the burden of the past. In Deathly Hallows, Harry sees Aberforth for the first time and is startled by the resemblance to Albus. The eyes were blue and bright, but they were not Albus Dumbledore's eyes, the text clarifies, as if to underline a difference more than physical. Aberforth's bitterness cuts through the air like a curse. He is the brother who never forgave, who remained rooted in the grief of a broken family, while Albus ascended to greatness. His bar is cluttered and dim, his demeanor gruff, his attitude laced with cynicism. But behind all that there is pain so tightly coiled, it has turned into armor. He tells Harry, Albus was never free. He was always bound to that blasted vision of a better world. This is not just a man speaking about his brother. This is a man speaking about betrayal. Aberforth witnessed the collapse of his family from the inside. The story is tragic. Ariana Dumbledore, their younger sister, was attacked by Muggle boys at 6 years old. The trauma left her unstable, unable to control her magic. Kendra, their mother, kept her hidden from the world. And then, one day, Ariana lost control. The result was Kendra's death. That alone would destroy many families. But the worst was still to come. In a confrontation between Albus, Gellert, Grindelwald, and Aberforth, 3 powerful teenage boys consumed by pride and ideology, Ariana was accidentally killed. Rowling never confirmed who cast the fatal curse. Aberforth says simply, "It was our fight. Ariana got in the way. She died." That line alone could have launched a chapter dedicated to the moral and emotional implosion of a family. Instead, we move past it. The duel that killed Ariana could have been one of the most emotionally charged scenes in the series. Imagine the moment. 3 teenagers, 2 intoxicated by dreams of revolution, the third trying to defend a sister who had suffered enough. The chaos of magic, the snap of wand fire, the silence that followed, and Aberforth, the youngest, left holding the body of his sister, staring at the brother he once loved and no longer could trust. That moment made him who he is, a man defined by what he couldn't prevent. But the story skips forward, leaving us to connect the dots. There's no chapter from Aberforth's perspective, no intimate portrait of the years that followed. He was left in the ashes while Albus soared, and so Aberforth became the man behind the bar at the Hogshead, a place of dust and shadows, goats and secrets. He is known for one bizarre incident, being prosecuted for using inappropriate charms on a goat. This detail has turned into a joke in the fandom, a footnote in his character. But what if it isn't simply comic relief? What if it's a sign of profound loneliness, a misfit's attempt at connection in the absence of human trust? Aberforth never married, never sought the limelight. He kept his head down, perhaps because the pain was too much to bear. His choice of animals over people may be a coping mechanism. Not an oddity, his relationship with Ariana is never truly explored. We know only that he loved her, fiercely, desperately, enough to stand up to both Albus and Grindelwald, enough to carry her memory through decades of silence. When Harry meets Aberforth in the final book, he hears a story that reframes the narrative of the great Albus Dumbledore. It is Aberforth who reveals that Albus was not always the noble figure Hogwarts students adored. Albus was a brilliant boy, Aberforth admits, but he learned more from grief than from books. That line, quiet and devastating, reveals the broken trust between 2 brothers and the wisdom of the one who was left behind. Aberforth's presence in the Room of Requirement during the Battle of Hogwarts is another moment that screams for expansion. Through a portrait of Ariana, he provides an escape route for Harry and others. In this act, he becomes a literal lifeline, a savior working in the background, but we don't see his thoughts, his motivations. We don't know if he felt he was redeeming himself or simply doing what was right. That ambiguity could have been resolved with a single chapter, a moment of reflection as he watches the new generation rise while carrying the weight of the old one. That's the point. Aberforth is not just a background character, he is a moral mirror. While Albus cloaked himself in noble causes and abstract ideals, Aberforth grounded himself in human pain. He is the Dumbledore who didn't seek power, who stayed close to the ruins of his youth. His rejection of grandeur is a quiet act of rebellion. He doesn't believe in noble deaths. You don't understand, do you? You're the same as he was, he tells Harry. You're not doing this because it's right. You're doing it because you think it's brave. Aberforth cuts through the romanticism of sacrifice. He speaks the truth the series sometimes avoids, that heroism, when detached from empathy, is just another form of pride. There is no scene of reconciliation between the brothers. By the time Albus appears in the King's Cross limbo, Aberforth is alive but off-screen. Harry does not relay Aberforth's words. We never know what Albus thought of the brother he left behind. There is a deep sadness in that. In real life, siblings torn apart by tragedy often circle around each other for years, too wounded to reach out. Rowling could have given them one last moment, even if it was wordless, a shared glance, a nod, a memory. But the story moves on, leaving us with a man in a bar and a grave no one visits. Aberforth's conversation with Harry about Ariana is a highlight in Deathly Hallows, but it is presented in fragments. The full weight of what he carries is only implied. He says, Ariana wasn't mad, she was a child, she couldn't control her magic. The rage in his voice is palpable, but we don't follow him beyond that scene. We never see him light a candle for her. We never see him look at a photo or stand before her grave. This absence of grief from the narrative is not realism, it is omission. He could have played a more active role in Harry's understanding of Dumbledore. Throughout the series, Harry reveres Albus, then doubts him, then forgives him. Aberforth could have filled the gaps, providing not just the facts, but the emotional context. What did it feel like to grow up in the shadow of brilliance? What did it cost to be the one who stayed when everyone else left? These questions remain unanswered, though Aberforth would be the only one who could answer them honestly. When Albus left Godric's Hollow to study with Grindelwald, it was Aberforth who stayed behind. He fed Ariana, tended to her, tried to keep her from destroying herself. He was a caregiver at 16, not because he wanted to be, but because he had to be. There is no monument for that kind of love, no Order of Merlin, no headmaster's office. But in the quiet acts of protection, Aberforth may have proven himself more grounded, more humane than his famous brother, and still the story doesn't follow him. Even at the end of the series, he disappears again. After the battle, we do not see him mourn or rebuild. There is no mention of what becomes of the Hog's Head, or whether he ever made peace with his past. The war ends, but for Aberforth, does the silence ever lift? It would have taken a few pages to give him closure, an image of him walking through the ruins of Hogwarts, or sitting quietly in front of Ariana's portrait, whispering words too soft for anyone else to hear. The contrast between Albus and Aberforth could have been one of the most powerful character studies in the series. Albus pursued ideas, Aberforth carried memories. Albus dreamed of changing the world. Aberforth tried to protect one girl from it. This dichotomy reflects one of the oldest questions in literature. Is it better to serve ideals or to serve people? Aberforth never wrote essays or gave speeches, but he gave Harry safe passage, and that act may have done more good than all of Albus's chessboard strategies. The Dumbledore family is full of silence. Percival, the father, imprisoned. Kendra, the mother, killed. Ariana, hidden. Albus, exalted. Aberforth, forgotten. And yet he's the one who endured the most, who saw the worst and lived with it. He represents the cost of genius, the price of secrecy, the wounds of war that don't make headlines. In a world of magical creatures and epic spells, Aberforth Dumbledore is the most human character Rowling never finished writing. If she had given him a chapter, not just a scene, he might have shown readers what it means to live in the ruins of someone else's legend. He might have told Harry the truth no prophecy ever mentioned, that being brave is not the same as being right, and that saving the world means nothing if you can't save your family. Aberforth Dumbledore deserved not just a name, he deserved a voice. Number 22, Parvati Patil. Parvati Patil danced into the Yule Ball draped in pink robes, her braids shimmering with carefully threaded gold, a vision of youth and joy. It was one of the few moments where she wasn't simply background, she stood, for once, beside the hero. And yet, even in that moment of spotlight, Parvati remained frustratingly out of focus. She laughed, she twirled, she frowned when ignored by Harry, and then faded again into the crowd of students, a girl with a name but without a story. J.K. Rowling gave us a Hogwarts full of voices of shadows and sparks, yet Parvati Patil, a Gryffindor, a seer in training, a fighter in Dumbledore's army, was reduced to cliché and colour. She first appeared in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, sorted into Gryffindor alongside Hermione and Lavender, yet her presence barely registered in those early years. A name on the class list, a partner in divination, an attendee in shared adventures, but never more than that. Despite being one of the few named girls in Harry's year, she is denied growth, denied conflict, denied identity. She is glimpsed beside Lavender, nodding enthusiastically at Professor Trelawney's morbid predictions, but her opinions are never voiced beyond the shallow echo of superstition. Even in the third book, when divination is introduced with all its dreamlike promise, Parvati's excitement is portrayed with a mocking undertone. "She's amazing!" Parvati gushed after their first class with Trelawney. "She knows everything. I bet she knew we were going to have this lesson today." The line feels purposefully ridiculous, casting Parvati not as a believer but as a gullible teenager dazzled by theatrics. There is no curiosity, no depth in her fascination, just the image of a girl easily impressed by beads and incense. Her twin sister, Padma, is placed in Ravenclaw, a decision ripe with storytelling potential. Here were twin girls separated by house, symbolically split between intellect and bravery, yet that dichotomy is never explored. In Goblet of Fire, the Yule Ball offers the rare moment when the Patil sisters are presented together. Harry takes Parvati, Ron is paired with Padma. The result is disappointment and discomfort. Harry barely speaks to his date. Parvati, for her part, remains graceful in rejection, but her emotions are left undescribed. She is an accessory, a prop to move the scene forward. Even her house, Gryffindor, begs for development. She shares a dormitory with Hermione, Lavender, and other girls whose personalities unfold across the series. Lavender Brown, often depicted with similar traits, interested in divination, bubbly, somewhat shallow, is granted drama, heartbreak, and even death. But Parvati, though she trains in the room of requirement, though she raises her wand in defiance of Umbridge, is denied the right to be remembered. In Order of the Phoenix, she joins Dumbledore's army. She is described as a particularly enthusiastic member of the group. But what does that mean? We never see her cast a spell, never hear her speak in the meetings. She is present, but silent, a body in a room, not a mind in a rebellion. Even when the inquisitorial squad threatens the DA, we hear about Ginny's bat bogey hex, about Neville's growing strength, about Luna's dreamy defiance. Parvati remains unvoiced, unseen, and unformed. Her interest in divination, which could have been her unique strength, is dismissed as laughable. The entire subject is treated with condescension by the narrative, and thus Parvati, by extension, becomes a punchline. When Professor Trelawney is fired by Umbridge, Parvati's emotional reaction, described as devastated, is one of her few humanizing moments, but even that grief is quickly forgotten. We never learn how she copes, never see her try to defend her favorite teacher. A Gryffindor would stand up and speak, but Parvati does not. Her presence during the battle at the Department of Mysteries is never mentioned, nor is she included in the list of those who suffered consequences. She is old enough, she is brave enough, she is a member of the DA, and yet once again she is left out of the action. When the real trials of war begin, Parvati, like so many side characters, fades into the tapestry. In Half-Blood Prince, her role dwindles further. The story now focuses on relationships, on heartbreak, on the psychological toll of Dumbledore's impending death. Lavender becomes central, her romance with Ron both comedic and tragic. But Parvati, Lavender's closest friend, is mute on the matter. She offers no comfort, no judgment, no commentary. She simply exists in the background, her friendship with Lavender reduced to proximity. Even when Lavender is heartbroken, Parvati's reaction is not depicted. One wonders, did she comfort her friend? Did she choose sides? Did she change her view of love, of boys, of herself? And then comes the final book, Deathly Hallows. A war is raging. The students who remain at Hogwarts live under tyranny, under carows and curses. The DA reforms in secret. Neville, Luna and Ginny lead. Again, Parvati is there. We are told she is part of it. But her name never rises above the surface. She does not take command, does not argue, does not fall. In the climactic battle of Hogwarts, a scene where every student, every professor, every ghost plays a role, Parvati's actions are unnamed. We hear about Padma, we hear about Seamus and Dean, we see Lavender fall, but Parvati... nothing. A silence that screams of neglect. And yet she had potential. She could have been a layered character, a young woman balancing mysticism with logic, a twin seeking independence, a believer mocked for her faith, a Gryffindor whose courage looked different from sword-wielding bravado. Imagine if her interest in divination had been respected. Imagine if she had experienced a moment of true foresight, had seen a vision that saved lives or revealed truth. She could have been the Cassandra of Hogwarts, dismissed, ridiculed, but right. Or perhaps she could have been the one to question Trelawney's theatrics and seek out the real heart of prophecy. The world of magic is full of ancient knowledge, of hidden arts, and Parvati could have become its student. In a story so deeply interested in fate, in chosen ones, in prophecy, it is strange how the one student who loved divination was never given a chance to matter. Even in her visual descriptions, Parvati is flattened. She is always defined by appearance, her long dark braid, her earrings, her silk robes. She becomes a motif of the exotic, the decorative. Her Indian heritage is never explored, never voiced, never allowed to inform her character. In a world where culture and bloodline often matter, think of the pure blood families, the goblins, the giants. Parvati's background is a blank space. She is Indian in name and skin, but her story is written with invisible ink. The series thrives on growth. Characters like Neville, who began as bumbling and frightened, became heroes. Even minor figures like Colin Creevey evolve from annoyances to martyrs. But Parvati does not evolve. She begins and ends as a girl interested in fashion and omens who attends a ball and joins a club, and then disappears. One might argue that not every character can have depth, that the focus of the story must remain on Harry and his immediate circle. But Rowling found room to give Zacharias Smith a personality, to develop the Patil twins just enough to distinguish their dresses, but not their desires. When it came to filling the halls of Hogwarts with life, Parvati was given a name, a house, a wand, but not a soul. Even structurally, her arc is missing. There is no moment of transformation, no decision that defines her, no personal stakes. We do not know what she fears, what she dreams, what she loves. She is a Gryffindor, but never shows courage. She is a twin, but never shows contrast. She is a student of prophecy, but never receives one. There was an opportunity for her to be more. Imagine a moment where in the final book, as Trelawney throws crystal balls from the tower, Parvati catches one, and it shows her something, not the future, but the truth. A vision that urges her to action, a vision that tells her to warn Hermione or protect Dean or stand her ground when all hope fails. That moment never comes. Instead, she ends as she began. A girl in a pink dress, smiling at a boy who will not look her way. Not because she lacks worth, but because the story never looked at her long enough to see it. Parvati Patil is not a failure of imagination. She is a failure of attention. In a series where names carry weight and choices build worlds, she was forgotten by the very story she helped fill. And so we return to that image, Parvati twirling on the dance floor, her bangles catching candlelight, her laughter fading into silence. She could have been a visionary. She could have been a lion, Instead, she was a shadow stitched to the hem of Lavender's robes. We remember her not for what she did, but for what she might have done. And that, perhaps, is the cruelest fate of all. Number 23, Ernie Macmillan. Ernie Macmillan could have been one of the most relatable characters in the entire Harry Potter saga. Not a hero, not a villain, not chosen or gifted, just a student who tries to do the right thing despite his flaws. Yet he remains a mere background detail in J.K. Rowling's sweeping narrative. When readers first meet Ernie in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, he is not a friendly ally but a source of suspicion. During a time when Harry is already isolated and vilified, Ernie adds his voice to the growing mistrust. He tells anyone who will listen that it must be Harry who attacked the Muggle-borns. His reasoning? Harry speaks Parseltongue, he's always near the scene, and perhaps most damning, he's famous. He's always been odd, hasn't he? Ernie says to Justin Finch-Fletchley, words soaked in the arrogance of someone who believes he understands more than he does. Ernie's mistake is understandable and even necessary in a narrative filled with black and white moral figures. Here is a boy reacting to chaos with logic, though flawed. He is not motivated by cruelty, as Draco Malfoy is, but by fear and a desire to protect his classmates. He does not attack Harry personally. He spreads what he believes is the truth. When Hermione is petrified, his prejudice only deepens because fear clouds his judgment. Later, after Harry saves Justin's life and the truth comes out, Ernie does something many side characters never do. He apologizes. Not just with words, but with humility. "I'm really sorry I suspected you," he tells Harry, adding that he hopes they can be friends. This moment could have marked the beginning of a powerful secondary arc, the development of a student who learns to question his assumptions and grow into a wiser, more tolerant person. But Ernie vanishes, not literally, of course. He pops up here and there, always in the periphery, always vaguely mentioned among groups. He is at the Yule Ball in Goblet of Fire, where he compliments Cedric and scolds others for not supporting a fellow Hufflepuff. He attends the DA meetings in Order of the Phoenix, again showing that he has the courage to defy Umbridge's regime. But these appearances are like smoke, visible but without weight. Rowling introduces a character full of potential conflict and resolution, but she never follows through. He never becomes more than the sum of his first impression. It's a missed opportunity that resonates more deeply when one considers how many times Rowling chooses to revisit other minor characters. Seamus Finnegan, another student who doubted Harry in Order of the Phoenix, receives a miniature redemption arc. He argues with Harry, sides with the Ministry, and then changes his mind. Seamus even appears fighting in the Battle of Hogwarts. Luna Lovegood, first introduced in the same book as an eccentric outsider, becomes integral to the narrative. Even Zacharias Smith, another Hufflepuff, receives more emotional definition, cast as a coward who ultimately flees. Yet Ernie, loyal and flawed Ernie, lingers in an in-between space. Never essential, never completely erased. The problem with Ernie's arc, or lack thereof, is not just that he fades into the background. It's that he embodies the perspective of the average Hogwarts student, the every wizard, if you will. He is not in the Golden Trio, he is not a Slytherin antagonist, and he is not comic relief. He is exactly the kind of student who would be most impacted by events like the opening of the chamber, the return of Voldemort, and the rise of the DA. Through his eyes, readers could have seen how regular students made sense of chaos, how they chose sides, and how they grew under the shadow of war. But Ernie is never given the space to internalize these moments. Rowling occasionally provides glimpses. In Half-Blood Prince, Ernie is made a Hufflepuff prefect. He takes the role seriously, perhaps too seriously, walking with an inflated sense of self-importance. This character trait, his self-righteousness, could have been an anchor for a richer narrative, a student who must learn that leadership is not about pride, but about humility. that helping others is not a performance, but a calling. Imagine a scene where Ernie makes a mistake as a prefect, where his confidence leads to harm and he must reckon with the consequences. Imagine him growing, reflecting, becoming someone stronger and kinder. That story was never told. Even his participation in Dumbledore's army is told with frustrating brevity. Ernie Macmillan was earnestly defending Harry, Rowling writes during one DA meeting. And yet readers are never allowed to feel that growth. We're told it happened, but never shown. Compare this to Neville Longbottom, who also begins as a background character. Neville's arc is earned through scenes of failure, vulnerability, and eventual triumph. By Deathly Hallows, he is a leader. Why couldn't Ernie be given a scaled-down version of this journey? It's worth noting that Ernie is a Hufflepuff, a house that already suffers from underrepresentation. Besides Cedric Diggory, whose death is more symbolic than personal, and Nymphadora Tonks, whose Hufflepuff identity is almost never emphasized, few from this house receive meaningful development. Ernie could have been a strong answer to the stereotype that Hufflepuffs are simply kind but unremarkable. He is not effortlessly brave like a Gryffindor, nor power-hungry like a Slytherin, nor book-smart like a Ravenclaw. He is diligent, loyal, and often wrong, but always willing to learn. That's what makes him interesting. That's what should have made him important. In Deathly Hallows, Ernie returns once more to fight in the final battle. He is 17, barely an adult, but chooses to stay and defend Hogwarts. This decision is buried in a single sentence. Ernie Macmillan marched off with Luna and Seamus to protect the corridor. That's it. No further elaboration, no emotion, no aftermath. Did he survive? What did he think as he faced death? Did he remember the time he falsely accused Harry and reflect on how far he'd come? These are the moments that turn names into people. But Rowling left Ernie as a name on the page. There's also something telling about how Rowling presents Ernie's flaws. His pomposity is never explored, just stated, then left untouched. In a universe where arrogance is often punished, think Gilderoy Lockhart or Percy Weasley, Ernie's self-importance could have led to a deeper lesson. Perhaps he puts others in danger because he overestimates his abilities. Perhaps he learns to listen rather than talk. Perhaps he realizes that being right isn't as important as being kind. But none of that is allowed to happen. His character remains frozen in time. One could argue that not every student deserves a subplot, but Ernie was not a one-line character. He had a voice, opinions, relationships. He was involved, visible, and relevant across 5 of the 7 books. That alone suggests Rowling considered him significant enough to develop. The decision to instead use him as decorative context, there, but not impactful, feels like a narrative half-promise. Take, for example, the scene in Order of the Phoenix, where Umbridge dismisses the legitimacy of Dumbledore's army. Ernie, though not central, is among the members who insist on continuing their meetings in secret. That's a bold choice, especially for someone who once aligned with school gossip. But readers never learn what changed his mind. Did Cedric's death shake him? Did his earlier accusations against Harry teach him a lesson? Did he come to admire Harry's integrity, even if he still found him difficult? These questions are never answered. Even visually, Ernie is never described with care. We don't know his one type, his Patronus, or his greatest fear. All these are tools Rowling uses liberally for other students, but not him. For a series that thrives on the richness of detail, where even minor figures like Lavender Brown receive emotional arcs, Ernie remains oddly untouched. That silence becomes louder with every reread. If one reimagines the series with Ernie as a more developed figure, several possibilities emerge. He could have served as a mirror to Harry, a classmate who challenges him, disagrees with him, but ultimately respects him. He could have shown how ordinary students found courage, not because they were chosen, but because they chose. He could have been a lens through which readers understood Hogwarts not as a mythic place, but as a school full of scared, imperfect teenagers trying to survive extraordinary times. There's also an emotional weight missing. When Fred dies, when Tonks and Lupin fall, readers feel it because those characters were fleshed out, flawed and loved. But had Ernie died at the Battle of Hogwarts, would anyone have mourned? Not because he wasn't worth mourning, but because we were never allowed to know him well enough. That, perhaps, is the greatest tragedy of his character, not what he did, but what he wasn't given the chance to do. Ultimately, Ernie Macmillan stands as a monument to the limits of Rowling's character economy. She built a world of immense scope, but not everyone got their due. Ernie is a reminder that even in magical worlds, ordinary voices matter and that sometimes silence speaks louder than any spell. Number 24, Astoria Greengrass. Astoria Greengrass exists in the Harry Potter universe like a shadow cast by a fire that never truly burned. She is a name, a mother, a wife, but not a person, at least not in the way readers come to know the rich tapestry of characters that populate J.K. Rowling's world. Her presence is a whisper, an echo of what could have been, and her story, if it can be called that, begs to be told with more than just a footnote in an epilogue or a line in a play. Astoria first appears not in the 7 novels but in a post-series interview with Rowling, then more notably in the stage play Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, where she is already dead. That in itself is a stunning narrative choice. A character introduced posthumously has no voice, no agency, no opportunity to evolve, and yet despite, or perhaps because of, her absence, Astoria radiates potential. She is the anti-Narcissa, the rebel daughter-in-law, the quiet force that could have redefined the Malfoy legacy. Rowling told us that Astoria rejected the ideology of blood purity that the Malfoys clung to for generations. In that decision alone, there was a story worth telling. Draco Malfoy, once the poster child of arrogance and bigotry, marries a woman who believes in tolerance. It is not a detail to be glossed over. Astoria Greengrass, according to Rowling, endured disapproval from the Malfoys for her progressive views. She refused to raise her son, Scorpius, to worship the old ideals of superiority. Instead, she embraced kindness, openness, and empathy. This was not merely a household disagreement. It was a war of ideologies, one that might have shaken the very foundations of a family known for its disdain toward Muggleborns. And yet Rowling chose to conceal that war from readers, cloaking it in implication rather than exploration. The decision to hide Astoria behind curtains and closed doors is especially baffling when considering what her presence could have added to the saga's legacy. Imagine Draco returning from the wreckage of the Second Wizarding War, disillusioned, humbled and wounded. He is a man shaped by the choices of others, a boy born into a world that demanded cruelty. Into his life walks Astoria, not as a balm for his past, but as a challenge to it. She does not comfort his prejudices. She dismantles them. The love that forms between them, then, is not easy or natural, but revolutionary. That kind of union deserves narrative space, not passing reference. Astoria was a Greengrass by birth, a name associated with another minor character, Daphne Greengrass, who was sorted into Slytherin in Harry's year. There is nothing in the original 7 books to suggest that the Greengrasses were different from other pure-blood families. For Astoria to emerge from that world with ideas so radically different suggests a quiet rebellion, one more compelling than loud heroism. While others fought on battlefields, she challenged bigotry in sitting rooms and nursery chambers. She did not change the world, but she may have changed one boy. And isn't that how real change begins? Scorpius Malfoy, her son, is the clearest evidence of the mother he lost. In Cursed Child, he is a gentle, studious, awkward boy who becomes best friends with Albus Potter. He is the antithesis of what one might expect a Malfoy heir to be. And though Draco plays a part in this transformation, it is Astoria who planted the seed. She raised him not to see the world through the binary of blood status. She insisted on a moral compass that did not point to dominance, but to dignity. This maternal legacy speaks volumes about the kind of person she must have been. Yet we never hear her voice, never see her in motion, never witness the arguments she surely had with Lucius, the quiet moments where she held Draco's hand during his darkest reflections. Rowling lets her fade into myth, a spectral presence defined only by what others say about her. This is especially ironic in a series where female characters, Hermione, Ginny, Molly, Luna, are written with fire and nuance. Astoria is granted none of that. She is a symbol without substance, a name without narrative. The space where Astoria's story could have lived is vast and fertile. Her courtship with Draco alone could have been a chapter in redemption, one that mirrored the uneasy post-war healing of the wizarding world. Did she meet him at a time when he was trying to forgive himself? Did she challenge his assumptions with quiet questions rather than loud accusations? A scene of Draco, so long shielded by arrogance, confronted by someone who does not flinch at his past but sees through it, would have given readers a glimpse of transformation that felt earned, not merely assumed. It is even more tragic that Astoria's death is used as a background device to explain Draco's overprotectiveness of Scorpius. The play implies she died young, of a blood malediction, a hereditary curse. This adds a layer of sorrow, yes, but it also strips her of agency. She becomes a narrative tool to serve the emotions of male characters. Her death is not about her, but about how others react to it. It's a trope, and one that feels particularly hollow when applied to a woman who could have stood for so much more. The injustice of her narrative absence becomes sharper when we consider how well Rowling portrayed ideological evolution in other characters. Severus Snape's arc is famously layered, torn between love and bitterness. Regulus Black's posthumous redemption, revealed in a single letter, still stirs readers. Kreacher, the house elf poisoned by hatred, learns to care for Hermione and Harry. Rowling knows how to tell stories of change. Why then was Astoria denied this same depth? Even Narcissa Malfoy, another pure-blood woman, receives a more complete arc. Her decision to lie to Voldemort about Harry being dead in Deathly Hallows is a moment of moral rebellion. She chooses her son's life over ideology. Astoria could have been the continuation of that theme, a next generation of Slytherin women who find their strength not in cruelty but in conviction. But she was never allowed that moment, not even a line. A single scene in which Astoria speaks to Harry or Hermione or even Narcissa could have enriched the saga. She could have stood at platform 934 and looked at the next generation of witches and wizards, proud not only of her son but of the fact that he would walk into a school no longer divided by blood. She could have embodied the message that redemption is not only possible but sustainable. Instead, we are left to imagine her in photographs and gravestones. Her absence becomes more poignant when readers revisit Draco's evolution. In Cursed Child, he is no longer the bully from Hogwarts. He is a grieving widower, a devoted father, a man who carries sorrow like a second skin. He speaks of Astoria with reverence. She believed the world had to be kinder, he says. That belief changed him, but how and when? Those are the moments readers long for, not just because they explain Draco's growth, but because they give Astoria life. The theme of transformation is at the core of Harry Potter. From Dudley Dursley's unexpected apology to Percy Weasley's late loyalty, the series thrives on people breaking free of the roles they were born into. Astoria fits this mold perfectly. A pureblood who chose compassion, a Slytherin who turned her back on elitism, a mother who refused to let the past define her child's future. And yet she is absent from the very story that celebrates such defiance. Astoria Greengrass could have been the ultimate testament to quiet heroism. She did not fight in the Battle of Hogwarts. She did not destroy Horcruxes or face down Dark Lords, but she healed a family broken by war, She chose love over legacy. She changed the course of a Malfoy's heart. In a universe where every act of rebellion is celebrated, hers is left unsung. The saga lost a vital chapter by silencing her. Even the fact that she was afflicted by a blood curse, a legacy from generations of magical inbreeding, could have been an allegory. She bore the consequences of her ancestry, just as Draco bore the burden of his father's choices, and yet she did not let it define her. Rowling could have used this to comment on the cost of old ideals, the rot within pure blood superiority, but the opportunity passed silently. In the end, readers are left to craft Astoria from fragments, a name from a family tree, a philosophy stated in retrospect, a legacy glimpsed through the gentleness of her son. That is all. No scenes, no memories, no voice. And for a world that gave so much breath to so many characters, from the house elves in kitchens to the ghosts in the halls, it is difficult not to feel the weight of what was lost. The absence of Astoria Greengrass is not just a missing subplot, it is a missing pillar in the structure of the post-war wizarding world. Through her, Rowling could have shown that healing is not always loud, that resistance can be soft, and that some revolutions begin in quiet rooms with lullabies and bedtime stories. She could have given us a Malfoy who raised his son with kindness because he learned it from the woman he loved. She could have shown us that redemption, real redemption, lives in everyday choices. Instead, we are left with speculation. We search the lines of Cursed Child for her ghost. We read between the words of Draco's grief. We imagine the strength it took to raise a son in defiance of centuries of tradition. And perhaps that's the cruelest irony of all. Astoria Greengrass, the one who refused to pass down prejudice, became a victim of narrative neglect, a character defined by her silence. Number 25, Dean Thomas. Dean Thomas is always there, yet never really present. In the corners of common rooms, at the edge of Quidditch celebrations, or standing behind Seamus Finnegan during arguments, Dean lingers like a shadow. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, he is introduced during the sorting ceremony, one of many new Gryffindors whose names fly by in a rush. "Thomas Dean," McGonagall calls, and Dean walks forward. That is his first step into the magical world, and for readers, the beginning of what could have been a rich journey. But as the years at Hogwarts pass, Dean is rarely allowed to step forward again. He exists, tall, good-looking, cheerful, but only at the edges of other people's stories. There is something curiously frustrating about Dean's treatment in the series. He is neither a background character nor a fully fleshed-out one. He occupies a strange middle ground, visible, active, mentioned, but never explored. His presence is noted during Quidditch tryouts, during classes, even at the Yule Ball. Yet J.K. Rowling never hands him a defining moment, a decision that shapes his arc, or even a personal conflict. When he begins dating Ginny Weasley in Half-Blood Prince, it is not about him, it's about Harry's jealousy. When he is on the run from Death Eaters in Deathly Hallows, it is not about his survival, it's about the trio discovering him. Even when he fights at the Battle of Hogwarts, Dean's courage is an afterthought. This absence is particularly glaring considering the pieces Rowling gave us, pieces of a potentially powerful subplot that was never realized. Dean is raised by a Muggle mother and stepfather. He is unaware of his true heritage as a half-blood because his biological wizard father, fearing Voldemort's wrath, left to protect his family and was killed. This is a backstory worthy of a central character, a boy who grows up thinking he's Muggle-born, only to discover he had magical blood all along and a murdered father with secrets. There is pain here, confusion, identity, classic Rowling territory. But we are never shown Dean's struggle with this revelation. We are told in supplementary material. In the books, the boy with the West Ham poster above his bed simply smiles, shrugs, and fades back. Dean's artistic side is a rare trait among Hogwarts students, and it is brought up precisely once. In Order of the Phoenix, during the infamous Dumbledore's army sessions in the Room of Requirement, Dean is seen drawing a perfect picture of Harry during one of their practice meetings. It's a charming, human detail. In a world of wands and curses, Dean sketches with a pencil, but the detail goes nowhere. We never hear of Dean's art again, never see it in action, never watch it offer insight into his mind. It is another thread left dangling, another lost chance at depth. Even Dean's friendship with Seamus Finnegan, his dorm mate and closest companion, is not used as an anchor. Their relationship is a constant in the background. They laugh, they bicker, they hang out in the common room. When Seamus falls under the sway of media narratives and mistrusts Harry in Order of the Phoenix, it is a pivotal moment of tension in Gryffindor. Seamus argues with Harry and Neville takes Harry's side. Dean, notably, says nothing. Why? He's right there. Surely he had an opinion, a loyalty, a conflict, but he is silent, unwritten. By Half-Blood Prince, Dean gets the only moment of personal spotlight Rowling ever offers, his relationship with Ginny Weasley. And even here, the camera lens refuses to focus on him. We are told Ginny is dating Dean. We see them walking together, kissing in corridors. But it is always Harry's reaction that matters. In the Gryffindor common room, Harry watches them kiss and feels a great blazing fire in his chest, not for Dean, but for Ginny. Dean becomes an obstacle, not a person. His feelings, his experience, his heartbreak when Ginny breaks up with him are not described. This is a boy who fought at the Department of Mysteries, who stood his ground at Dumbledore's army meetings, who refused to align with the Ministry when it turned against truth. Dean had every quality of a central figure in the Resistance. In Deathly Hallows, he is one of the many who go underground after the fall of the Ministry. We are told he is on the run, hiding in forests with Griphook and Ted Tonks. This group could have served as a mirror to Harry, Ron, and Hermione's own journey, another trio struggling for survival in a lawless, magical world. But Dean's time in exile is reduced to a brief mention when Harry encounters him again. We do not know what Dean endured, what he felt, or how the experience shaped him. Dean's silence during Deathly Hallows is almost haunting. The wizarding world is falling apart, blood status is being weaponized, and he is in the crosshairs. Though he believes himself to be Muggle-born, he goes on the run, placing himself in real danger. What did it mean to him to be hunted not for who he was, but for who he thought he was? Where was the fear, the confusion, the search for identity in the face of state-sponsored hatred? We hear none of it. Dean's journey could have paralleled that of Hermione, who goes into hiding, erases her parents' memories, and fights fiercely for justice. But Dean's story is left outside the frame. There is, at the heart of this absence, a loss for readers. Dean represented a unique intersection of identities, a half-blood who thought he was Muggle-born, a black British student in a mostly white school, an artist in a world of fighters, a friend in a house of heroes. And yet, the richness of his narrative is left behind. Even Lee Jordan, a fellow black student known mostly for Quidditch commentary and pranks, is allowed more edge and political voice, notably through his broadcasts for the underground station Potterwatch. Lee is part of the Resistance. Dean is just on the run. In the final battle, Dean returns to fight. He picks up a wand and stands with the defenders of Hogwarts. He is not a bystander. When the walls of the school crack and giants attack the courtyard, Dean fights. But we never see through his eyes. He is never allowed a moment of rage, of choice, of reflection. We do not know what he fights for, his family, his father's memory, his love for Hogwarts. There is no inner world, only a name on the list of fighters. The contrast between Dean and characters like Neville Longbottom or Luna Lovegood is stark. All three began as background figures, but Rowling chose to invest in Neville and Luna, gave them families, traumas, growth, triumph. Neville evolves from the shy boy who loses his toad to the leader of the student resistance. Luna goes from being the oddball to the voice of fierce wisdom. Dean remains still, even in moments that seem to cry out for a Dean Thomas perspective, the discrimination of the Carrows, the collapse of trust, the imprisonment of Muggleborns. He remains silent. One cannot help but wonder what could have been if Dean had been allowed a single chapter from his point of view. If we had seen the Wizarding War through his eyes, what would we learn? Would we hear about his mother's fear when he disappeared? Would we watch him sketch lightning-struck trees in the forest, trying to hold on to beauty in a dark world? Would we see him grapple with the legacy of a father he never knew, hunted by Death Eaters for refusing to serve them? These are not small questions. They are the very essence of what Rowling's world often explores: the costs of war, the burden of heritage, the struggle for identity. Dean's character was built on foundations with potential: a talented artist, a loyal friend, a fighter, and a boy caught between bloodlines and war. Rowling once said in an interview that she had more backstory written for Dean, but had to cut it for pacing. It is a bittersweet admission, because in cutting Dean, she also cut a unique angle on the events of the series. Not every character needs a spotlight, but some deserve more than the shadows. Dean Thomas should have been a mirror to Harry's leadership, to Hermione's bravery, to Ron's loyalty. He could have given us a new way of seeing the Wizarding world, not from the Chosen One's pedestal, but from the margins. He could have shown us what it meant to survive without being a hero, to resist without a prophecy, to matter without being famous. Instead, he was the boy on the sidelines of a battlefield, never quite called forward. There is something both noble and tragic in that. Dean fought anyway. Even without a central role, he showed up, wand in hand. He ran from the Ministry, lived in fear, and returned to defend a castle that never made him its champion. His story, unfinished and unsung, lingers in the cracks of the series, waiting for someone to write the pages he was denied.